Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. Good evening. It is that time of the week again. We've got a Seahawks game to talk about, and unfortunately, it was this particular Seahawks game that we need to talk about. It was not fun. There was not a lot of fun to be had. There's not a lot of positive stuff to take out of that game, but you know what? We still got to talk about it just the same way we talk about any Seahawks game. So we're going to go into it. We're going to try to figure this one out, and then we're going to come out of it, and we're going to be moving on to the next game. So I am here with Brandon of the Hawks Nest, as I am every week to do this. How you doing tonight, Brandon?
Pretty good, all things considered, Brendan. Pretty good, other than getting our butts whooped this past Sunday. I'm hanging in there. So, as you say, we sort of turn it on to the other, but look a little bit at this loss. But still feel good overall about where we're at this year.
That's right. So before we get into the details of that game, I want to know, they say there's like this 48-hour rule when it comes to football. You got to let it go. You got to find yourself back to rational thought after 48 hours. You get that 48 hours to mourn when things don't go your way. So we're past that now. We passed that earlier this afternoon, so like 6 hours ago. So with that being the case, how do you feel big picture about that game and this team right now?
Well, I think this is a measuring stick game, as I said, coming into it. And I'm not going to change my stance on that because there is an urge to kind of wash it down the drain a bit. And I can get that urge. And I think that their team's going to have to do that. And the good news is I'm sure you've seen the statistics on this as well. Coach Carroll since 2010 would have been one of the best at turning things around after a loss. So this isn't necessarily an indictment toward the rest of this season. But when you look at the past year and a half of overall success, overall winning more games than losing, you do have a little bit of a theme throughout that time period of there not being a lot of stiff tests along that track, of there being backup quarterbacks or teams down a lot of different players and not necessarily, really difficult opponents. And then when you face difficult opponents, kind of not able to stand with them. And again, this year now we get an opponent that isn't down a backup quarterback, isn't down their best offensive playmaker, and they are able to kind of take it to us. And it doesn't mean we're a bad team. I think we are a good team. But the look on this game and why I say it was a measuring stick game was, can you be a contending team this year? Are you of that variety right now? Doesn't mean we're not on the right path or the team isn't progressing to the right place eventually here. Just a matter of how fast you get there.
Yeah, I think that's a very accurate assessment of that game. I think that the reason why this is hard for a lot of people is because that was a game that taught you in no uncertain terms that you're not a Super Bowl contender right now. You are not on that level.
Right.
I don't think, really, to be perfectly honest, even if we were a terrible team, one of the worst teams in the league, I don't know if 37-3 is ever okay in the NFL. This is not college football. College football, you can have a game where one team has a student body of like 20,000 and another school has a student body of like 300 and they can barely put a team together. And yeah, you put those two teams together, it's going to be a blowout. But this is the NFL. These teams are supposed to be running pretty close to each other in terms of talent and ability. Mm-hmm. So there's nothing okay about losing 37-3, I think, under any circumstance. Like the Ravens have played some bad teams this year and they haven't beaten them 37-3. But at the end of the day, what we really learned here is that this may be a good team, but it's not a great team yet.
It's true. And it's and that's okay, being it is year 2 of a rebuild. It's not to say that people are impatient or that there's an expectation that this is where they have to get to right now. We were hoping they could. We thought some things could work in the right direction to where there's a lot of reason to believe that it was realistic to even think it could happen. But that measuring stick is the measuring stick. And you're right. The fact that you didn't even hold up a close fight, I'm not talking that you need to go in there and win that game, but the fact that you didn't even make it a game is certainly indicative of the fact that, considering that previous past track record I talked about, not only this year, but going back and looking at this current Hawk team, where when you have had the stiff tests, you've just not been able to really answer the bell, absent maybe the Detroit Lions wins the past 2 years. I guess I should give some credit to that, but that's kind of it. And that is definitely an outlier to what you see in the rest of the game. So yeah, it is what it is. There's not really an excuse to be made for this last week's game. You just got, as I put in my title on my post-game reaction, outclassed and outmuscled. I mean, that was really it on both sides of the ball. And Now we got to turn it forward and keep developing and keep pushing this team forward, Brendan. And I think that the one thing, let me just say real quick on this, is that I sense there's some impatience in the fan base, a heavy amount of impatience. And a lot of this, I think, is built out of the fact it has been 10 years since we've been in the conference championship. A lot of it is built out of a valid feelings and a valid sentiment in their outlook of this team. I wouldn't try to push a ton back against that. The one thing I would ask people to try to do, if possible, is to try to chop up a little bit of these 10-year stretch, maybe more into an 8 and a 2. 8 years being that 8-year period and what was going on there, and this 2-year period and what's going on here. I don't think that they're the same things or the same issues or the same progression points going on. And I think it makes it a little bit more clear as to what's happening now and the progress that's occurring when we don't try to backtrack to 2017 or 16 or 18 and find some relations to this team within that. I think it is a bit of an apples, oranges kind of situation.
Yeah, I agree. And I do concur that I see a lot of impatience with the Seahawks, the Seahawks fan base right now. I definitely know what you're talking about. And I think that's a very good point. It's pretty rare that a coach and a GM get to oversee a failed era of football on a team and then get to run the next era. But that is what happened here. It is.
Yeah, it is.
And it's one of those things where I remember looking at this a few years ago near the end of the Jason Garrett era. What is the longest tenured head coaches not making a conference championship game? And usually if you don't make the conference championship game within, I think it was like 5 years, you're out. I found like 3 examples of it going more than 8 years. It was Jason Garrett, Wannstedt in Miami, and he was a weird one because there were a couple years where he was like the partial head coach. It was like a shared head coaching job. And Jim Morris Sr. in New Orleans, and they were just happy to have somebody who wasn't a complete idiot. So I think he almost had a lifetime pass there. So it is rare that you see a coach and a GM keep their job with this much of a dry spell, but that's what happened. And I think if you take the last 2 years in isolation, you should be able to see some pretty good stuff here.
That's my thinking with it. I don't think I want to take any fire away from those people angry at this 10-year period and how it's been, or angry what happened through the late 2000 teens and the draft mismanagement, the money mismanagement, the inability to, update the schemes on both sides of the ball. But why I differentiate this 2-year period to that other sort of 8-year, 7-year period is because of the fact that they have made changes. They are doing things differently. I don't think that there's anybody, even the most ardent haters of a Schneider or Carroll out there, that wouldn't look at their draft approach the past 2 seasons and say that it's been value-based and not need-based, as was the big problem in those 2000 teens. That's just one area of the team. I could point to the updated defense, updated offense. We haven't got all the full returns, but they're making steps to fix things, where that was a big part of that problem period, in that 8-year period, is they kept trying to squeeze out the last bit of juice that was there from those LOB teams, rather than really going back to the blueprint, back to their origin sort of, and operating from that. So that's why maybe I think some people are looking for a little more impatience from like you and I out there and maybe the subscriber base. That's why, at least from my perspective, I don't have as much on that, where I do look at this in that perspective. I do see this as year 2 of the rebuild, and this is progressing. We are moving forward, albeit maybe not as fast as some people would like.
I will say this. We did make that Leonard Williams trade. And when you make that Leonard Williams trade, you are kind of saying, I think we are very close to a Super Bowl team.
Yeah.
Like whether or not you intend to say it, that's what you're saying. So I can get it from that angle. You make that big trade, you give up a big asset, a significant asset in this upcoming draft, and then you lose like that. I get the frustration on that level, right? Because that trade is saying one thing, and then that game says a completely different thing. And by the way, that's no disrespect to Leonard Williams, who I thought was one of the few guys who actually played pretty good on a Sunday. But the point is, when you make that trade, you're saying, I think we're very close to a Super Bowl. And then that game says you're not. So I get that.
This is where I want to say that place we get to of the nuance spot, where it's not to try to paint people that have that feeling of being completely out of line for thinking it. Quite the opposite. I think that they are valid to look at that. And if you want to come to me and say the bottom line is 10 years and your one and done is about as good as you can get to the playoffs, that's not acceptable. It wouldn't be for any other organizations. I'm done with it. I get that. I totally get that. I just try to, I think in where I look at it, that's why I separate a little bit more, though, is because at the end of the day, yeah, I'm angry as anybody else about not getting back to a conference championship or even sniffing a Super Bowl, but I just want to see my team make the changes and try to fix the things and find some resolution there. And you're right about the Leonard Williams addition. That was a go for it move. The team did not expect to have themselves lapped this past Sunday. They expected, I'm sure, to hold up much, much more better against this Raven opponent and then walk away from the game going, yeah, see, we can stand with the best. We can go toe to toe. I think if you were to pull both the front office and Carroll, that would have been their thinking in making that trade. And so the fact that you didn't show that did the discouraging part of this makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm. All right. So before we dig into the gritty details of this game, there's a little bit of news that I want to go over here real quick.
Mm-hmm.
We got encouraging updates from Abraham Lucas. Apparently, there's a chance he practices this week, and he's almost definitely practicing next week. So there's a very good chance that at the very least, we're going to be serving up pancakes to Nick Bosa on Thanksgiving.
And you're going to need it with Chase Young and Cross. We're going to need both those guys, or with Chase Young and Bosa out there. You're going to need those guys. Gregory behind that, Drake. I mean, they're going to be able to send pass rushers for days at you. And we can see right now the line is coming together a little bit health wise. I think Lewis and Haynes are both fighting, and even Brown, I think, are all working through multiple injuries. I wouldn't be the least bit decided like, well, yeah, his finger's broken here. He's got a rolled ankle down there. Everyone's hurt at this point in time of the year. So I'm not trying to, but they don't seem necessarily super healthy. And then your right tackle situation definitely was a problem one this past weekend. So him coming back, I mean, a big key maybe to this offense, finding a bit of firmer footing. You can't help. You had your worst day this past week in pass protection from a hurry standpoint throughout the last year, and bringing him back will certainly hem that up a little bit.
DJ Dallas may miss a little bit of time, but the injury that he sustained in that game, which I think was a shoulder injury, is not believed to be all that serious. So worst case scenario, we see a little bit of Kenny McIntosh, who is ready to go. Best case scenario, DJ suits up this weekend against the Commanders and all is well. So that seems like a pretty minor thing.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I here's the thing too, is I'm kind of ready to see what McIntosh has over Dallas. I know Dallas has a lot of backers out there in the coaching staff. But he, some of these punts, I'm watching the All-22 especially, like he caught the one over his shoulder there and he turns it back around and he's trying to reverse field and he just doesn't have the juice to reverse the field. And if you had a guy back there, I know that McIntosh is not exactly a guy that's big on the juice with the being pass, but he's quick. But that's the thing with Dallas on this kick return stuff and punt return stuff. He looks a little bit slower to me this year. Is that fair? Maybe I'm not saying like he's like lost 4 steps, but he doesn't look he's never a quick guy, but he looks even a little bit to me, I hope he gets back healthy quick, but I'm ready to see some McIntosh.
Well, my thing is that I don't think Dallas is going to be here next year because he's a free agent, and McIntosh is kind of the guy you drafted to replace him. So let's figure out if that's going to work or not now, at least a little bit, before we go into next year and then find out, this guy can't field punts, or, I just want to see it a little bit. So I agree with that. If there's the opportunity to do that, I'm not against that.
Yeah, I think we know what we got in Dallas, and not a bad addition, but like you say, maybe not part of the plan into the future. And let's give him McIntosh touch to see what we got out of this guy.
Derek Hall also escaped any serious injury, shoulder with him. Seems like he will be good to go. Maybe misses a game or two, but seems more likely he's ready to go for the Commanders game, which, I mean, we can't really afford to lose more edges. We're already we played a game against the Ravens and our leading snap getter at edge was Darrell Taylor. That's how the season's going.
Yeah, we're maybe gonna have to start kicking out Leonard Williams as an edge here pretty soon. This Hall too, because Hall did make some plays in this game. I know the defense, everybody kind of gets a little bit of their moments in this game as far as having issues, but there's still some spots where he's showing up out there in the run game and as a pass rusher in moments. He's coming along as a player. Back to the theme maybe of this show, Brendan, not as maybe fast as we would hope, but definitely he's showing up on the tape. You're seeing him on some of the All-22 snaps in there where he's beasting up on a guy and then making the play and you're going, oh, okay. This is the guy we got. He's got this in his bag. We just got to get him tapping into that consistently.
Drake Thomas is going to IR. Obviously, he wasn't really playing that much. He wasn't even really valuable on special teams. So I don't think anybody's going to really feel that one, but he is going to be out for at least a month. And Bobby Wagner, 7th player in NFL history to reach 1,600 total tackles.
Let's go, Bobby. Let's go, Bobby, out there here another year, getting it done, doing it. I mean, Brendan, I know that there's, including yourself, I know we've had some discussions on Bobby, and he's your favorite all-time player, but you've also been a little bit torn at times by the fact you felt like, man, but he does seem so much diminished from what he was. But he has certainly given us a really good season, has he not, so far? At least if we put it up against the measuring stick of how the position was being played last year.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought this was going to be a one and done thing, but now I'm actually pretty confident he's back next year. It doesn't seem like he cares that much about money anymore. If he did, I don't think he would have taken a $5.5 million deal here.
Yeah.
With the year that he had last year with the Rams, I think he could have gotten more if he really wanted to. And I mean, I think we need him, and I think he wants to be here. I think going to a team like the Rams and having such a bad season kind of made him realize I really don't like playing on a bad team where I feel like a hired gun. And I think it's actually going to happen. And if he stays healthy this year and comes back next year and stays healthy, he's going to get to the Mount Rushmore of total tackles. He's going to get to like 1,800. And that's going to be Mount Rushmore with Ray Lewis, London Fletcher, Junior Seau, and Bobby Wagner.
Well, by my metric, I did a show on this before the start of the year, going deep into the stats and where these guys are at. It's obviously hard for some of the middle linebackers that are in the 60s and 70s where they don't even track stats like tackles or anything else. You can almost go on, it's only off their all pros. But I think if you're being sober, realistic, and as unbiased as you can be looking at Bobby on this, to me, in my opinion, he's got into a top 5 phase of things here, Brendan. I'd put a Buckus, I'd put a Lambert, I'd put a Ray Lewis, I'd put a Junior Seau over the top of Bobby. But I don't know if there's a lot of other players that I would take past him because his longevity is a part of it on top of how productive he has been. But he is scaling up that mark and where he will land. And I think at least top 5 right now, he's got a super strong argument. I mean, it's could be a healthy debate. There are people who come in and say, well, how about this guy? Like say London Fletcher, how about Brian Urlacher? But to me, he's got them beat out at this point.
And I don't think London Fletcher has much of a case. He's not even a Hall of Famer. He was just a guy who played a long time and kept getting tackles.
Yeah.
And it's really hard. Like Dick Butkus is really hard because the only thing you have to go on is you basically talk to somebody who's really old and watched him play. That's all you do. And
the thing that you got to let's do this with Dick Butkus as well. He plays in a time when they had 12 game seasons. He plays like 7 years. He's injured like 2.5, 3 of those years kind of out in and out of the lineup. You know, he was very impactful. And if you track stats, for instance, like forced fumbles and fumbles recoveries, he was a freak with that. Like probably one of the best all time. But longevity's got to factor into this. You know, that's my problem. It's a problem I get the Gale Sayers argument with another bear out there that gets talked a lot about as being an all-time great. It's like, yeah, you've got to have some longevity here too. It can't be just look at how good I was for a short span, because then we can start backtracking into, well, I had 1 year. Well, I had 1 game. Well, we don't want to start going down that lane. You got to do it a little bit for a long period of time to do it. That's part of measuring these guys. The greatness is the toughness that it took to sustain yourself for years, not to just go out there, throw your body around, break it apart in 3 or 4 years, and then you're done. It's great that you did that. Don't want to diminish Butkus. He's top 10 all time, Brendan, I think. But Bobby's in what, year 12? I mean, he's going to start working his way to doubling the career of length and, doubling, if not more so, the amount of games Butkus played in, on top of being a Super Bowl winner. And, I think, yeah, I know there'll be a lot of people like love their Butkus, but I'll take Bobby.
By the way, every team that Butkus played for was awful, by the way. He is the unluckiest man in football history.
Yeah.
Never made the playoffs. I don't think he ever came close to the playoffs. He was like, I mean, it's almost like an extreme version of Elway's college career where Stanford was never any good. It's crazy that you could have the best player in the sport for several years and not do anything even close to good with it.
And they had Sayers on the other side of the ball. That's the other part. Yeah, those 2 parts to kind of work off of. And yeah, it wasn't those guys' fault, of course. It was a badly run Bear organization at the time, and they just didn't know how to build a winner. But nonetheless, it is what it is with that, comparatively speaking, with a guy like Bobby who's got all the playoffs that he's played in as well. And guys played a whole nother season of playoff games on top of it in the course of his career. So yeah, I put him at 5, and Bobby has been just amazing in what he's done. I know in coverage and his ability to run and move is definitely been reduced, Brendan, but the instincts and his ability to be on it in the run, his ability to get off blocks. He was on mic'd up in that Browns game, and there was a moment JC Treader was like, I finally got you blocked. I finally got you blocked. And Bobby's laughing. He's like, I'm not supposed to let you block me. He's like, I know I can't get you blocked. And I went back and was watching some of the 22, and you're just watching him slip the block right and left at the second level. And this is so beautiful compared to what we saw last year, where those guys were just getting those blocks at the second level and getting railroaded up the football field.
Yeah. Incompetent Bears organization. That phrase seems very, that seems very familiar, doesn't it?
It's those owners that own it for 3-4 decades, where they just get too long, and it's I don't know, maybe you just get lost into like winning doesn't matter as much, or you're set in your ways and you do it just the way you do it. And it's very particular to you, but it's not really updating to the way you need to run an organization in the modern era. I can't always make sense of it with what they do, how they do, but they operate from an odd stance. They got that thing too with the fascination of the monsters, the midway, and building a defense up. Like, look at them over the years, from the Lovie Smiths to Eberflus now. It's like they always end up double backtracking to a defensive coach in an offensive era, and then they don't deal with the quarterback at the same time. It's like a common element and thread you can see from the 80s to the 90s to the late 80s to the 90s to the 2000s. It's always kind of there, where they just don't ever deal with those two items.
All right, so you got to crack open this Ravens game. Let's start with the defense, because the defense is the side of the ball where you can find a couple of things. You can find a little bit to work with here. It's not all just a disaster on that side of the ball. They got a couple stops in the first quarter. They got a couple turnovers in the second quarter. There are a couple guys to highlight, but on the whole, like, 300 yards rushing is something that needs to happen in college football, not in the NFL. Very little pressure, very little of anything good going on. So
300 yards is what the Huskies do to the USC. Am I right? Huh? Am I right?
And I mean, like it's not even that. It was like, man, I mean, that USC defense is making their own quarterback cry. That's how. And
in his mama's arms, not just crying, his mama's arms. That's one thing to be on the sideline, like where you're just there and you're like holding back and you're doing the tough, like, it's not, he's jumping into
the other teams out there, you don't want to draft this guy. He's a crybaby. You definitely want to let him fall to that late first round area.
Completely. He's a let him just drop down into 25, 7s, 8s right on. I'm not saying I wouldn't still take him, but I got to give the guy a hard time. I mean, come on, I mean, that one was he's gonna get a little shade for that one.
Yeah. All right. So the defense, like I said, Boye Mafe played a good game. He had another sack, a strip sack. He almost had another. 6 tackles. He's on his way. He's on his way. Played one of the best games of his career, and that's saying something at this point, because it seems like every game he's doing positive things. So if we want to try to find some silver linings to lead off, Boye Mafe's got to be the strongest silver lining, right?
I believe so. He is the complete player. He's ascending star. We thought a bit at the start of the season, okay, can he round into being a top kind of edge in the sport? Not as a star, but in one of the upper level edges. And indeed, he's kind of going a little bit further beyond that right now. Maybe he's a guy now scratching into being a potential guy where I thought of, okay, double-digit sack guy, stops the run. That was kind of what I thought his upside was as we drafted him. He seems like now a guy that can stop the run every bit as good as we thought he could. But then that pass rush can maybe go from just simply being double digits at like 10 a year to maybe he can get to be a 15, 16 a year kind of cat as far as that goes. And that is tremendous, because it just helps the upside to this defense moving into the future. But he is the full meal deal. You're getting everything, including the little dessert cup at the end. Okay. So he's coming with it all as far as his game's concerned. And upside isn't done showing at this point. There's a couple snaps in there on Stanley where he got both hands into him, and he's taking an all-pro, left tackle, and he's sending him for a ride backwards. I mean, it was some explosive power he displayed in this game, on top of the dip and the bend that he had in that strip sack and the near strip sack that you mentioned.
I thought Leonard Williams played fairly well. I mean, he didn't have a big statistical impact, but I see what makes him a really good player. So I like what I see.
I agree. I'm working on I'm going to do a cut up for him and a little video on him, on how he did in his action, and going back, watching his cut ups. He was great. He's as advertised for what we thought we were getting. You and I had it in the perspective of real. We're not getting Aaron Donald, Chris Jones here. We know that, but we're getting a really good player. And he was commanding double teams out there. He was at times splitting the double teams. He was providing some pressure at times. He was penetrating the backfield at other times. You look at his PFF score, which backs this up, and him being in the round above the 70 range, when pretty much everyone else on that defensive line was in Suckville throughout the course of that game. So, he is going to be a good addition to this team. I believe they're going to make him one of the higher priority free agents to bring back. There's a lot of discussion about will we be able to not, or will we be on. I feel like this team will be very strongly driven to bringing him back even more so than a Jordan Brooks at this point. Some people might be thinking Jordan's the priority free agent. I think it'll be him. And you mentioned with Bobby, the one thing they could maybe do with Bobby, even on bringing him a 1-year deal, is kind of void a year out. Save a little bit of money on his, even if it's at a $5 million, right? You give him a $1 million base and then void it out to a 4 next year could be a straightforward place to save a little bit of cash while bringing back a middle linebacker starter.
I actually agree. In fact, I've already made my peace that Jordan Brooks is not going to be here next year. I don't see how we can afford it. And honestly, with the kind of money I think he's going to ask for, I don't think it's worth it. I think Jordan Brooks is having a great year and I'm really happy about it. But he's not a green dot linebacker. That's been proven, and there's value there. And at the end of the day, this is one really good season that he's had. And it's not like he wasn't playing before this year. He was playing, and he was playing at a pretty mediocre level. So I just don't see it. Like, I think that Jordan Brooks is going to expect close to Roquan Smith money. And I think somebody out there will give it to him, some team with way too much cap space. We know there are plenty out there.
Even Tremaine Edmonds money or Jermaine Pratt money is too much.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't see it happening. And I can't imagine we let Leonard Williams go unless the team just falls apart to the point where they're like, there's no point. Like, that's basically what happened with Sheldon Richardson, right?
Yeah. And with Sheldon, though he was a good run stuffer, there was still, I think, some times where the team wasn't completely sold on his motor at points. I think that's one of the reasons he wasn't retained is you gave us good stuff, but the price for what we're getting back is not and remember with that with Sheldon, you had him coming off the rookie deal. That's going to be that, big contract he was due to hit with. Whereas Leonard's going to be a big contract, but it's probably not going to be like the market setting kind of deals we've seen at the defensive tackle position recently with some of the younger cats that are just getting into their second contract. So that does make a bit of a difference. But yeah, you drafted Jordan Brooks to be a middle linebacker of the future. He's currently basically playing the will linebacker position, and he's played that throughout most of his time. I do think he's going to get a big contract. I think there's still some holes in his game, even though he is getting better in some of those places. It still remains. You saw it this past week with Andrews and his efficiency out there in pass catching, and the amount that he was targets for first amount of catches he had. Some of it was the Ravens attacking our scheme, Brendan, that's for sure. But some of it's also him still not necessarily great out there in coverage. And if I'm paying 17, 18 million per year for a linebacker in this modern era, and I have those worries still in coverage, that's kind of a tough pill to swallow for me.
I thought Trey Brown was pretty good. I don't have a big beef with the way Trey Brown's playing. I think he's doing his job more or less.
Yeah, he's good out there. I think he's holding up. Yeah, I think he's been solid for us out there this year. It's been sometimes really good to great, and he's been solid other times. I've been very happy versus what Mike Jackson gave from us last year. Even there, he has been an improvement over that.
And I'll tell you, I think we're done finding the positivity here because there's been. I even made a couple videos about this already this week because I saw it so much coming out of that game. People trying to act like, you can't blame anything on the defense because the offense wasn't supporting them. And I can't get behind that philosophy at all. Like, you can't give up 300 rushing yards in a game. You can't miss, by the way, PFF 14 missed tackles in that game. And then try to say, it's not my fault. It's somebody else's fault. No, that's I don't subscribe to that. There's way too much of an investment on this defense for me to blow off that performance as just, it's the offense's fault. So I don't know where you are on that, but that was something this week that I just did not get at all.
I definitely maybe line a little bit more to the alignment of if I'm looking to really it's all about to me parsing out blame and how much blame to parse out where. Everybody can everybody can be blamed, but where does the majority of the blame lie? What is the thing that's the biggest issue that needs to be fixed? I don't look at the defense right now and go, this is the biggest issue to be fixed. You've stopped the run fairly well up until somewhat recently. Even recently, it's past this game. As you and I've discussed, I didn't think last week, even against the Browns, it was really that hellaciously bad. Like, this is now an issue that's going on for us, especially with Leonard Williams' presence here. So yeah, the 300 yards ground game is a bad thing. And it's not to say it's all on the offense from my perspective that this is the reasoning. The defense missed tackles. The defense was getting pushed out of their gaps. They weren't being sound as they've been early on in the year, in their fundamental approach on just gap integrity, especially. Guys were getting out of their gap all over the place. But some of that is also going to be born from the fact that this stuff stacks up. If you have an offense that starts to go week in and week out and week in and week out, and they're getting 3 and outs and they're getting off the field and they're not putting any consistent drives together, and every week now they're putting it back on the defense, get back out there, back out their defense, back out their defense. A defense will, yes, grow tired over the course of a game, into the depths of the third quarter and in the fourth quarter, but they will also grow tired over the span of a 4 or 5 game stretch. When you keep doing that and putting them out there over and over like that, there's going to be a failure eventually with defenses. It's one of the reasons I always say that I lead with wanting an offensive-minded head coach, an offensive-minded approach, because these defenses, as good as a defense can be, as strong as it can be, it will eventually start to crack and fall apart when you keep putting them in that position. So yeah, the defense needs to tackle better. But what's one of the things that happens to a tired defense? What's one of the things that you see as a common element of a defense? Well, not being able to hold their ground at the line of scrimmage, and also not being able to tackle particularly well when they start getting tired. Now, does that mean that that's exactly what's going on here? I don't know, but I'm saying I have some instincts that they're kind of connected. And if the offense in that first half can find a couple more consistent drives and some time to give the defense a little bit of blow and catch their breath back at times in that first half, maybe they're a little stronger into that second half. But that's just a place where I lie at, and it's a little bit built off of just watching some of these recent defenses on some of these teams that have these struggling offenses, and watching over the years of how they have also similarly broken in this kind of fashion as you go through a year, where you just can't lean on them like that in this modern era. It's the offenses are too good. They're going to find eventually some holes. And then the second you start to wear down, the second you get a little bit of fatigue, now they got you. And it's keeping them out of that fatigue point to me as much as anything else.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely agree with that part of it. But to me, I look at that game and I go, you started out with you forced 2 punts on the first 2 drives. Maybe it was 2 3 and outs. I can't remember, but it was 2 punts and then 80-yard touchdown drive, 80-yard touchdown drive. This was not a situation where the defense was bulletproof for the first 50 minutes and then they wilt in the last 10. So
agreed.
I'm not like, we've seen that before, right? We've seen games where the defense just bangs for the whole game off. We see our offense 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out, and the defense does not give up. They keep coming. They keep coming. They keep coming. Sometimes they wilt at the very end. Sometimes they actually hold up and manage to win the game anyway. But either way, it's really hard to blame anything on the defense. But this game, there was some good stuff, but there was also a lot of really bad stuff. And did you watch Monday Night Football last night?
No.
Okay. Because I did, and it couldn't help but make me think about this. These New York Jets have one of the worst offenses in the league backing them up, and this defense never stops coming. Like, they fight until the game is over. And watching the Jets this year has actually been a lot of fun because they do not give up. They never give up on defense. Like, they're playing. The Chargers are a slightly above average offense this year. I'm not saying they're a great offense, but they're getting no support from their offense, and they get the Chargers to go 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out. They play the Eagles, and they get the Eagles turnover, 3 and out, 3 and out. And I'm looking at that, and I'm going, if the Jets defense can do this, I don't know why I should be giving my defense some free pass to give up 300 rushing yards because the offense had a really bad day. Because the Jets do it almost every week. Every week their offense is terrible, and every week their defense fights like hell to keep them in the game. They embody that old John Heisman quote. Did you ever hear that one? The better to have died a small child than to have fumbled the football. They really embody that, and that Jets team is heroic, I think. But I look at that and I go, I kind of wish we had a defense like that, man.
Well, I wouldn't push back against any of that and saying that the Jets have probably better built defense at the point. I think the one thing I'd say is that from an expectation level standpoint, coming into this year, the Jets were viewed as having a top 5 defense. Coming into this year, we were viewed as having a top 30 defense. So I do have a little bit of a harder time, I guess, getting that stage of feeling like this defense has to carry the day. This is again where we come back to who's the blame in it. Your offense was supposed to be a top 5 offense this year.
Mhm.
And your defense was hopefully going to get to the middle of the pack. You're to say there's, and we're going to get into this. Just there's people to look in this game and take a hard, close look at and say, you didn't do enough defensively. You're not been doing enough defensively, especially for what we're paying you. We're talking about paying Jordan Brooks money. And it's like, we're paying him, but then you're not really getting all that bang for that buck when you're paying him at that price. There's a couple guys in this defense, a few guys that we can absolutely point to that too. And being that, but when we come down to it, you were supposed to be driven by your offense, driven by a great special teams unit, and the defense was supposed to be rounding into middle of the road, coming forward from back of the pack to middle of the road. I think the defense has taken those steps forward this year like we had hoped to. The offense has completely failed, even approaching, even coming near the span of what they were supposed to be. And they don't have, outside of the offensive line injuries, to me, there's really not a whole hell of a lot of excuses that add up to me for that side of the ball.
Yeah. Yeah. So I made another video about this earlier this week. It seems like when you add in the dimension of a more mobile quarterback, a running quarterback, a read option quarterback, this run defense does get a little more stressed, and I don't think they do a great job handling it. Even going back to the New York Giants game, Daniel Jones did have a decent amount of success running that stuff on you. So that's probably just going to be a bit of a weakness of this team. I mean, we all love Bobby Wagner because he's doing an incredible job this year, but he does give up quite a bit in the speed category. And I feel like a quarterback like a Lamar Jackson in this game, especially, but also guys to a certain extent like Josh Dobbs or PJ Walker, they're going to be a little bit of a tough handle for this defense. The good news is we don't play too many of them going the rest of the season, I guess, right?
Well, and it'd be also awesome if you could maybe not have your defensive ends crashing down every time on the give back out of read option, out of shotgun. Watching the tape, what I see over and over again on these runs, think to the Darrell Taylor run on Dobbs and that touchdown run, for instance, to give you an example. You got the defensive end who's responsible for the quarterback. He's got to read the play. He's got help inside on the give. So he's got to stay locked in on the quarterback there. And this happened this past week against Lamar at least 3 times in watching the tape, Brendan, where that end comes then down, completely bails out the back end there and gives the quarterback an easy read to go take the ball and run at that point. If he holds the line, he's going to have a tackle for an easy play on the quarterback. But saw it with Taylor, I saw it with Hall at times. I've seen him just where these guys get dead set in on plowing down in the line of scrimmage. I think it's a coaching thing where they're coaching him to do it. That's creating the hole in the read option keeper game, though, for the quarterbacks, from my perspective, more than Bobby's loss of things. Speed might be a part of it too, but that's showing up a bunch with these guys just continually banging down on the line of scrimmage. And I don't know why they do that, because that's how you're supposed to teach it. You're supposed to teach it to read it, make sure that the ball's been given away, then go help your guys to the inside. Like, make sure it's firmly away and then go, because you're the responsible guy. It's like setting the edge. You're the edge guy in that. You're responsible there to keep that contained, the quarterback. And these guys are losing that, and that's undisciplined football, or they're teaching it that way. I don't know why they would, unless they're so scared about the hammering of the inside run, and they want that edge guy to help out inside. I don't know why, but that's been frustrating to watch and how they've played that from my perspective on just the quarterbacks finding these yards. You're right. The yards have been out there from a variety of these quarterbacks, and sometimes they're making it a little bit too easy for them to go get it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I looked at it earlier this week. In these games where we play pocket quarterbacks, the worst game we had was 3.8 yards a carry, and on average we're allowing, it was somewhere around like 3.2 yards a carry. And then against the teams we played that have more mobile quarterbacks, guys who can do read option stuff, the best we've done is 3.9, and after that Ravens game, the average is like 5 yards per carry. And it's kind of a tautology, right? To say that, if the quarterback can run, then it's harder to deal with. I know that's like no duh, but I think it does speak to it's because it's not just the quarterback running. It's the threat of the quarterback running. So you have less resources to invest in stopping the running back.
Right. Exactly. But then you might have them thinking that we just sucked at stopping the run last year, so we need those extra resources to stop the run because we sucked at stopping the run last year. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that's because that would only explain. It'd explain if you see Darrell Taylor do that once and you go, well, that's Darrell Taylor. To see Derek Hall doing it, to see Boye Mafe doing it this last week, seeing a bunch on the tape as I have the Giants game, it starts to feel like more of a purposeful approach from Clint Hurd and company in order to provide more resources for that inside run. But then it does leave out to that quarterback, and yeah, you'd like the linebacker to reach there, but I think a lot of linebackers at that point, because their first priority is to get to that inside back, right? Whereas the defensive end's supposed to sit there and root down. The linebacker's first step's got to be to the run play. So you can see where any linebacker, fast or slow, you're putting him in a pickle there, because I got to take a couple false steps down to the running back who's not getting the ball on the keeper. And then I got to get back out wide to the quarterback if he keeps it, because my defensive end's also crashing down. That's just going to lead to some natural holes and openings out there. And it's not a smart approach by the Hawks to take this. They're just better suited to try to stop up the stuff in the middle in there, take advantage of Leonard Williams and his presence down there now, as opposed to that, because that's not working, to your point on that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think Derek Hall, maybe part of it is that he is a rookie.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm not shocked that he struggles against the run. Mafe doing it's kind of surprising, though, because if there was anything that stood out about Mafe last year, it was that, wow, for a rookie, this guy is good against the run. So that does kind of lead you to believe the coaches are telling them to do that, right?
I see it too much on tape for it not to be some part of that. They're maybe not 24/7 they're doing it, but they're not teaching it as I've been understood. That we did this whole thing of how to stop the read option back 10 years ago, right, Brendan? So we've all gone deep down this trail of what's the proper way for the guys to play it and how they eventually solved it. Why is read option not being run 24/7 across the league anymore? Is because teams solved it by applying this methodology of approach, and how you slot one guy for the quarterback, another guy for the running back. You don't allow the lanes to open naturally inside as much as you can control. But you usually don't have the guy going down. Like if you had the guy going down and chasing it, you would have done that in like 2010 prior to Robert Griffin being here. If you saw a read option play, it's like they're playing it like that kind of,
Mm-hmm. So yeah, run defense as bad as it can be. Like it looked like USC against Washington. It really was that bad. A lot of it came at the end of the game, but still, like I don't think that that's the free pass that some people are ascribing to it.
No, 300 yards.
Mm-hmm.
It's embarrassing to give up that amount of yardage. I mean, it just is. So there's no excusing that. That's awful. We got a couple donos too, by the way.
Yes. We'll get to that in just 1 second here. I do want to say the pass defense, I think Lamar had like 33 dropbacks and they had like 200 net yards. That's not really that bad. Like the pass defense was not awful or anything like that. That's very low on my list of things to be upset about. I will say Woolen had another kind of day, like is some okay stuff. So a lot of like there was one play where it looked like he was like high or something. He's jumping after the ball like 2 seconds after it gets there. He got beat for a touchdown by Odell. It's the way I put it in a video this morning was he's not playing bad enough to get upset about, but he's not playing good. That's the way I put it.
I think that's a great measured way of putting it, man. I would see it the same way. I don't think that he's playing bad. Don't think he's playing benchable state, but he's not as, let's say, locked in maybe as he was last year. Mm-hmm. And where he was really on his P's and Q's. And this year it just kind of looks like he's more in a bit of a reactive kind of state out there, on that side of it. And I agree with you. I did like at times in this game, they put Lamar into a bind of throw a 9 route. Lamar, show us you can throw the 9. And he showed you he can't throw that route. I mean, he had a couple throws in this game where he vastly overthrew him. So I did like that. Would have liked to seen him maybe do a little bit more of closing down on Andrews. You come in this game going, who are they likely to target a whole bunch? That guy. Who did you let get targeted and be super efficient in those targets throughout this game? That guy. Would have been good to maybe, try to build a little bit more of a game plan built around not allowing him to be a security blanket for Lamar. When it's all going to hell, he can just always sidearm flick his way to Andrews for a completion.
Yeah. Witherspoon probably had his worst game as a pro, although that speaks more to how good he's been than him having a terrible day. He missed 2 tackles.
On a bad day. He also had almost a pick too. So I agree with you. Yeah, you're right. But and he still had some bright moments.
Yeah, so I thought there was some good stuff with Adams. Like there are some plays where it feels like he's all over the place. And then there are some plays like the 3rd and 18 he gave up to Andrews where somehow Andrews, nobody's within 40 yards of him at the line of scrimmage. And he lumbers his way for 20 yards, for 15 yards before a defender even is on screen. So mixed bag there.
We're going to have to make a choice. We're going to make a decision on the safeties this offseason too, by the way. And this isn't an evaluation for today and now. And Adams is playing okay. He's playing okay. He gave us a great moment last week in the Browns game and what he prided. We're getting nothing as him as really a pass rusher to this year up until this point. Going back and watching the tape, there was a lot of missed tackles, a lot of poor tackling technique coming from him. Mm-hmm. And you get that sometimes at times too, a little bit from Diggs, and you get a little bit of Tariq Woolen doing that last week as well. It's a bit of an issue here. And, I feel for Jamal in that I'm not trying to say that this is the thing why I say we got to give it a year, because or give it through the end of this year to make the determination and all this stuff. I'm not trying to make that point, Brendan, but a lot of people talk about our cap situation and where we're at and how we're hindered and what we can't do after this offseason. And there's two guys in the secondary in that safety position. They're taking up a lot of money off this cap right now. They're a lot of resources. And you got to wonder at one point or another on those resources being invested in, especially if we're going to look to pivot in a different direction if this doesn't work. That, what are we getting for that bang for buck out there on that? What is being provided with that? What is the returns on that? And I think it's going to be a valid question to ask after this season, where that may very well be the path for our Hawks to look at. Because I'm not saying either two are playing bad necessarily, but you're paying them real good money, not to just simply give you average performance. Yeah,
it's not good. Two things that I want to briefly go into on the defense before I take a look at some of these donos. First, this was one of those games where we ended up playing a lot of Trey Brown and not a lot of Julian Love. And it seems like every week we go one way or the other with that, seemingly based off matchups. But I find it interesting that you're playing the Ravens and you would go that way. What do you think was the impetus behind that?
Not really too sure, because obviously he's a better tackler, and you think you would have wanted the extra tackling help out there versus the coverage guy. But they seem to want a little bit more of that. Maybe the part of that was the matchup of, okay, when Brown's out there, now we can have Mounts on the outside and cover those 9 routes up and he'll stay on top. And they trusted that a little bit more than Julian Love, perhaps. But it is a bit of an odd decision for me. They do seem to do some fluctuation things week to week defensively. They don't just remain exactly the same, to your point on that. And, like in this game, we ran a little bit more 3-4 than I think we've run throughout the whole entire year. That was definitely on display quite a bit, but didn't work.
Yeah, not at all. The second thing I want to bring up here is I saw a chart today, and we've talked about this before. The Seahawks blitz rate so far this year has been about average. It's right in line with the average blitz rate across the NFL. I can't remember the exact number. It's like 20, 23, 24%. So that's a big change from previous years. However, that only really has to do with 5-man blitzes.
Right.
The Seahawks are dead last in 6-man blitzes. I saw a chart today, dead last. They do not send 6 players. We talked a little bit before this game about how maybe the solution is to just send the house at Lamar. Now, that game's over. You can't do anything about that. Would you like to see some 6-man blitzes from the Seahawks going forward?
Yeah, because the whole point of this is that you don't bring the 6th and the 7th if you're Carroll. If I go and ask Carroll, Brendan, go send 6 and 7-man fronts, he'll say no, because then we're going to give up a lot of big plays. We'll give up a lot of points with that. We'll get scored upon a lot if we do that. Well, what the hell happened this past Sunday? And they brought a lot of empty 5-man blitzes, and the Ravens picked it up every single time they did, Brendan. You're not overwhelming the numbers of the offensive line. When you bring a 5th defender up like that, you're merely challenging whether or not they're going to pick up that defender or not. And most of these quarterbacks, Lamar all day long picked it up. The line picked it up all day long. He was comfortable in that pocket despite those 5-man protections. And, you do that at times if you're a team like the Rams that have a Donald type of player, you're trying to drive into getting a single block opportunity, because once you bring the 5, it's 5-on-5 at that point, line on defense. But it's not terribly inventive, and and again, offenses becomes every bit as predictable as not blitzing, right? Because you go, okay, this team is either not going to blitz, or when they blitz, they're bringing a 5th man. Those are the only two things we have to prepare for, nothing else. And meanwhile, Brendan, I know we aren't going to get to the offense quite yet, but you flip it to the offensive side. The Ravens are doing exactly what I would want to do defensively. That defensive game plan that they unmasked to me against us this past week, the way that they played us this past week, is the exact style of defense that I would want to play. Stack fronts all day long, but not always bringing guys. Confuse the hell out of that quarterback. Make him process. Make him think. You didn't make Lamar think. You didn't make him process on the field at all, because there's a simplistic nature to your defense that still remains readily apparent week in and week out. It is improving. It's getting better, but the thing that will hold this whole improvement thing and getting to a true elite defensive status back is falling back into old machinations, old habits, Brendan. Old habits that have long been proven that they don't work as well anymore. And there is some of that still within this defense, some of those vestiges still there within this defense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I mean, maybe it's just going to have to be a baby steps thing where next year we take the leap to 6-man blitzes. But you've talked about before how you're not a fan of the 5-man blitz. You feel like it's a half measure. And I think a game like this really shows why.
Yeah. You bring the blitz to overwhelm an offensive line, to confuse a quarterback, to speed up a quarterback's clock. And it doesn't do any of those things. Like I said, to me, it's really a thing set up to just build to, but Carroll doesn't want to blitz. So it's like, I feel like the defensive coaches come to Carroll and they're like, look, we got to dial up some pressures. We can't just run with the front four. It's not going to be enough. And he's like, okay, I'll let you blitz, but you can't go more than one because I need my guys on the back end still to protect against the deep stuff. Yeah, but that's not, coach, but it's that or nothing. It's that or nothing. Which one do you want? And the coaches go, okay, I guess we'll just do the 5-man blitzes then. And they're not getting it. Like I said, with Jamal, as Jamal got past that one pressure on Daniel Jones in the Giants game and the knock up on the head there in the Browns game, has he gotten any other pressure? Has he come close to even stiffing the quarterback? And it's no, because when you're sending 5, they can roll the protections to his side. All you got is a slide protection. Oh, Jamal's coming this way, slide it. Oh, he's coming up the middle, slide to the middle of the protection. Then it's not the toughest adjustment for an offensive line to pick up. I'm not a fan of it, and I'd love to see them do some. Again, the Ravens game plan, what they threw at Geno in this game, we'll talk about it, but that's what we should be doing. That's the smart approach to me.
Okay, so let's see here. The Gavin KJG, thank you for becoming a member over on the Hawks Nest side, it looks like. So
let's go, Gavin.
Welcome aboard.
Welcome aboard, man.
The Snail, thank you for the $5. Scoring 3 points is a scheme issue, not a talent issue, and I don't want to hear about Pete being the issue. That was not a Pete Carroll offensive game plan.
I think it's a valid point to make. First, let's unpack this. Scoring this many points with the amount of talent you have in the field is unacceptable. That's 100%. I think no one can argue that, in my opinion. It'd be very hard to do so. I don't care how good the Ravens team or the Browns team is. You put this team together to be offensive driven. You stacked a load of talent across the board. You put a bunch of assets into that. They should be better. Bottom line. I don't know that it does have anything to do with Pete. I can say I don't think it's likely to have anything to do with Pete. I put this on Waldron's plate. The question comes down from my perspective on the Snail is Pete hindering this offense? Is he driving this offense? I talked about machinations on defense. Is he driving this offense to the machinations of the 2000 teens, which was the power run offense and taking deep shots over the top? So let's look at this last game. Did we utilize a lot of outside run? No. Did we utilize a lot of fly sweep game? No. Did we take a lot of deep shots then over the top throughout the course of this game, especially in that second half where Geno was just basically, let's chuck it up and see what happens? Yeah. And I think that's a part I wonder about here, Snail. I think you're right. I'm not trying to put it on Pete, but that's the part where I wonder, is he letting Waldron operate this scheme unfettered? Because it seems like the playbook has been reduced down and tore apart from what it is when you look at McVay's scheme versus what we run. It doesn't even look like the same playbook you're operating off of, not even in the same vicinity. And it's really like a bare bones compared to what you might see from McVay. And I don't quite understand why that is the case.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The only thing about this game plan, I guess if you want to call it a game plan, is it seems like there's a lot of plays, especially on third down, where there's no intermediate option. Everyone's either going deep or you've got JSN hanging around for a screen. There's nothing in the middle. There's nothing like intermediate, which is... That could be Pete, I guess, because we know Pete doesn't like throwing to the middle of the field. We know that he likes, the big play. He likes trying to go for the chunk plays. I guess that part of it could be Pete. I like it'd be really weird if that was Waldron, because McVay's all about the intermediate stuff.
That's where I struggle with this one, Brendan and Snail. You might be completely right, where it is just completely Waldron is just having a bad season as offensive coordinator, and maybe he's in over his head. It could be that. But that's the part that I just doesn't add up to me. If he failed running his scheme, that would be one thing. And if the scheme looked even like an echo of what the Rams run with McVay, that would add up to me. But the fact that it's failing, looking a lot more closer aligned to the type of offenses we almost ran back in the day, makes me wonder. It makes me wonder.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So to talk a little bit more about the Waldron thing, because I think of the multiple things you could talk about on the offense, because yeah, we're going to turn the page to the offense now because there's a lot to talk about there. Of the things that are going wrong this year, I think I'm the most surprised by Waldron because he did really well last year. And it seems to me the solution is very simple. Like, this should not be that hard. We have things that worked really well last year and earlier this year, and you're just not really doing them. Like, I was looking at our snap counts yesterday, and Will Dissly may as well not be on this team anymore. Like, why are you paying him? He could be Brady Russell. It would make no difference. He's basically not playing anymore.
Mm-hmm.
If he's hurt, then why is he even active? Why play him the couple of snaps you do? Why not just get him off the team or put him on IR? And same for like in this last game, Bobo barely played, which I mean, I understand that to a certain extent, as you get your offensive line back, you want to go back to what your original plan was, which was probably a lot of 11 personnel. But it almost feels like Waldron assumed that the pass protection and the offensive line play was going to get back to a high level when some of these guys got back from injury, that he just kind of took it as a given that he didn't need to do the things he did in those first few games to mitigate the problem anymore. And he forgot to actually check to make sure that the offensive line is actually playing well. That's like one element of what I see going on here. But yeah, it's just really confusing because you'd swear the problem is pretty easy to fix.
Yeah, he's not making whatever he's doing on his side is not making it better. I think the bottom line of this is that you look at a lot of offensive coordinators throughout the sport, look at the Seahawks team with this talent, and they go, man, I would get so much more out of it than what he's getting out of it. And the pass protection didn't hold up. Well, you're playing the number one defense in football. What did you expect? On the road, you thought they were going to hold up in that environment? Where it's, again, just stuff that's ripped out even in the playbook last year, post snap motion. Can you remember them running much motion in this game or throughout this year? I can't. They have success on the post motion snap plays where they'll roll him out to that strong side where you start tight end here. He comes over here. Gino rolls out back over here. He's got an easy completion because nobody picks it up. Didn't run that kind of play once in this game. Used to run it 3, 4, 5 times last year in just about every single game. Where are these missing elements? The fly sweep, the bubble screen was used twice, but that was absent that, not by anybody else. Where is that part of it? These are mainstays of the McVay scheme. Where have they gone? The utilization of outside zone run, pitch plays, not a part of the offense in the least. We could talk about the 12 and the 13 personnel versus 11 personnel. I don't have a lot of explanation for it. It makes some sense on the Bobo stuff because you couldn't run the ball. Why? Because you couldn't convert a first down. Why? Because you're 1 of 12 on third downs. So you're now in 3 wide receiver sets most of the time on second, third down. And that means they want to get JSN out there. That means Bobo doesn't have a spot on the field at that point. But this is one of those ones that has me as much scratching my head as any part of this team. I'm very encouraged overall by this team, but the part that has me as much frustrated as anything else, even beyond the defense with its 5-man blitzes, because they are taking steps forward and they are improving, Brendan. The offense and it not being what you brought it in here to be. Not you wanted to take McVay's team. He's beating the hell out of us with this scheme. Let's utilize that. Let's take that in here and onboard that here. Let's get all this talent so we can make it run and hum like a well-tuned engine. And then you keep it in first gear, basically, is how it feels. And I don't know why. Yeah.
All right. So Empower Code, thank you for the $20. Woo. 13 personnel is the key to victory. We need to find that balance on offense. Feels like we're over-investing in the JSN hype. Also, for anti-Geno folks, would Locke have immediate chemistry with the wide receivers coming off the bench? Doubt. So there are 2 things here. Let's start with the first one. I pointed out in the snap count video, Lockett, Metcalf, and JSN both basically had like 85 to 90% of the snaps in this game. They basically played the whole game. And I understand that's what we wanted to do this season, but it's not until you can actually make it work well, that's not a good excuse.
Got a question for you. If the Seattle Seahawks had, because I think that there's some issues here with the JSN thing and their drive to try to get him acclimated in this offense and validate that pick in so many respects. If you go a different direction with that pick, I don't know wherever else, Levis, and now you have Bobo as that receiver in the slot now. And maybe now you're more open to going to the 12 and 13 personnel. Is there a better record on this team this year as we stand right now than where we're standing than we would have been otherwise, in your opinion, at that point? Well, we've been worse. Both.
I don't think you'd be better. I don't think you'd be better. Honestly, it'd probably be more annoying now because like I've had to deal with the Drew Lock stuff for the last couple days. If we had Will Levis, I'd hear 10 times more Will Levis stuff. So it'd be more obnoxious, but I don't think it'd be better. I don't think it'd be worse. I think we'd be.
But don't you think there'd be a drive to go to more 12 and 13 personnel, where the drive throughout the early part of this year has been to the 11 personnel, and you've not run it well, you've not run it efficiently. It's in fact caused a lot of your offense to go off the rails a little bit. So there'd be less of about you're utilizing Bobo, and Bobo is so much better than JSN. It's more about now they get back to, like Empower Coach talking about, more of the 12 and 13 personnel looks that worked so well for you last year that you have kind of abandoned, despite the fact they've been good for you this year as far as efficiency goes.
Yeah. I could see that. I think the offense would be better. I don't think it would result in a better record necessarily.
That's fair.
But I think the results would be better, and that's not a bad reflection on JSN. That's just
no, it's just not working as to me.
It's the situation.
It's the situation. It's not bad. I still believe in JSN. It's not that this puzzle hasn't fit into the picture quite right. They're jamming it in, and there's still some spaces, from the piece that they put in there a little bit. And you're like, that doesn't quite, it's not quite, I need that pyramid 500-pound stones, can't put a laser beam between them line kind of tightness to it. And it's not there at this point.
Yeah. I mean, this might just be what the offensive line is this year. Like Cross might be having a little bit of a lost year because of the injury. Like, he's not bad, but he's not really developing. And you can't tell me he peaked as a 21-year-old rookie.
No.
Like, I will call you a liar if you try to say that.
That's because we have the injury we know the injury, the turf toes. We know those are tough to get over. We know that linemen can get back faster than skill position players because they don't have to cut hard and do all that, but it's got to still be probably bothering him.
So I don't know what's going on with Damian Lewis, but he's like regressed super hard. I don't know what to say about that anymore, but he doesn't want to get paid this offseason, I guess, or he's hurt. Like I don't see Damian Lewis finding his way out of this spiral right now. I thought he was, I know the PFF score was good, but I thought he was bad against.
I did too. I thought PFF was way more kind to Haynes and Lewis both. I didn't agree with the scores, and especially don't agree with the scores going back and watching the L22. Those guys are not helping us right now when they're on the football field. And I know they're probably injured, but that's just the bottom line, is they're not net benefit to us right now.
And what's Lucas going to be when he gets back?
True.
Like, he's still going to be the guy with a bad knee, maybe he'll be the guy with a bad knee forever. So maybe the 11 personnel, which I know we want to do, is going to have to be a thing next year when Cross has a full off season to heal and Lucas has a full off season to heal. And you've got maybe Cooper Bebe or Graham Barton in there at left guard instead. And you've got second year Oluwatimi and second year Anthony Bradford. And then your offensive line can handle the 11 personnel, but it's not going to happen right now, I don't think.
Agreed. Yeah, I see it the same way.
So, yeah, the second part of this statement here, the anti-Geno folks would Lock have immediate chemistry with the wide receivers coming off the bench. Doubt. Yeah, so there's been a lot of Drew Lock talk the last couple days.
Drew Lock talk.
Yeah, and I made a video yesterday talking about it, and I got to admit, I don't understand this one. I don't get this one. The people out there who need to be replacing Geno Smith at quarterback are named Bo Nix, Michael Penix, Quinn Ewers, Joe Milton, Cam Ward. None of those guys are, the guys named Drew Lock are not the guys who are going to come in, take Geno Smith's job and do a much better job than he's doing. So it's not happening right now.
No, it's not happening. The Lock thing is being louder and louder out there. And when he has his bad moments, they look extra specially bad. And so people really it sits at the forefront of people's brain. But at the end of the day with this, the pass rush he was under tremendous amount of pass rush this past week. Like I said, you had more pressures in this game than any other game, by far. It's a little bit like that one pressure game we had on the defensive side of the ball against what was the Panthers, where we had this like insane pressure game. It was like that on the other side of the offensive ball. And you just, quarterback can't operate. I've said it over for weeks. I've been consistent with this. You're not going to get good quarterback play when you have no running game and they're under an onslaught of pressure consistently. Now, does that let Geno off the hook fully on this? No. Criticism of Geno's valid. He's got to be playing better. Like Coach Carroll said, especially the stupid, boneheaded, dumbass turnovers that don't need to happen, the unforced kind of errors like that, got to get those cut out of your game. But as far as him, being the problem here at the head of this, I can't get to that being the spot. And the whole Lock coming in, like you said, I think it's more about the draft guy you're going to go in the future. People have told me that Lock's the future. He's on a 1-year deal. He's not part of the future necessarily in that aspect. They've had a battle, Brendan. The thing with this, they had a battle. Geno won it out. People go, well, they had COVID though. Lock had COVID. That's why he lost it. Wait, what about all training camp? What about mini camp? What about the game prior to that in the Steelers where he has the fumble caused on him on the final play where you're trying to see what he's got and he gets the fumble caused, a turnover. The thing we're trying to avoid right now, moving off of Geno to go to Lock, is the thing you're not going to get in moving that. The evidence to go to Lock, and people who make that case, and you're right, there's a lot who've made the case. They still haven't really presented a good argument as to why it's smart to do so. They'll put the argument forward as to, well, you can't do worse than Geno. Well, at least he's got the legs to move around. That's what I said too. Yeah, you want to bet? Yeah, let's see. Because I said, at least at Denver, he had a running game. He don't got a running game right now. If he was bad in Denver with bad pass protection and a running game, how's he going to be in Seattle with bad protection and no running game? But yeah. He's not the fix. We're going to have to ride with Geno. Geno's got to still play better at the same time, but it's where it gets hard to sometimes dissect this because it's not always just a single villain in the room in the back twirling their mustache. And it's like, he's the guy that did it. Like, sometimes it's a couple of guys you got to kind of point to a bit or factors.
Yeah. It really, that Family Guy meme where the guy goes up to Peter and he's like, okay, you can either have a boat or you can have whatever's in this box. And he gives him a box. And Peter's like, a boat is a boat. The box could be anything. Like Drew Lock is the box. And a bunch of people are trying to take the box, even though you've got the boat there, where I know he's not a great boat. He's not the best boat, but it's a boat and the boat works. We know the boat works because it worked last year really well. Yeah. Like, the reason why you're not hearing a real argument about why it's smart to go to Drew Lock right now is because that argument doesn't exist. It doesn't. There is, if a Drew Lock person tries to go up to a non-Drew Lock person and convince them that we need to start Drew Lock, and the guy's like, okay, persuade me, he couldn't say anything. He'd have to make something up. He's got like maybe 2 games in Denver across 3 years where Drew Lock was good. I think there were like 2 games where he was genuinely good, and like a couple drives in the preseason. That's all you have to work with. Like, it doesn't exist. It blew my mind how much people talked about Drew Lock over the last couple days. Blows my mind. Like, there are things that I don't agree with, but I get it. Like, some of the people who don't think Geno Smith is the guy, like, I don't really agree, as annoyed as I am with him right now, but I get it. But the Drew Lock stuff to me goes right next to the trade DK Metcalf thing I have no idea where this is coming from. Like, have you ever seen Drew Lock play? Like, I follow a bunch of Broncos fans on X, and they look at some of the Drew Lock movement in the Seahawks world right now, and they start laughing their ass off.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of human nature with this, where if you have a starting quarterback and a good of like legitimate backup that's not like Holton Allers, but a guy that's a former 2nd round pick behind him, and that guy starts to falter a little bit of this is sports, I think, human nature, where the drive starts to be a little bit to, whether it's smart or not, just that, my emotions take me to do that guy. He'll be better. Take him out there and do it. But we make decisions. If we're going to move out a quarterback, especially a quarterback, the leader of your team, you're going to change out that chemistry out. You're going to say, okay, we're off Geno. We're bailing on you, Geno. You're not good enough. You're not the guy. And you're doing so to him without that running game, without that pass protection. Tough to make that decision. To me, if you're going to get to the spot of ever getting to a spot of really considering Lock, it's got to be to a place where he's got a little bit of a running game. He's had his pass protection, and he is still looking like a shell of his former self, or like a shell of what we saw last year and when he got the Comeback Player of the Year award. But those things have not been on point throughout the course of this year. They just haven't. You've had some big runs, but there's not been anything close, anything in the vicinity of consistently running the football week in and week out. And the pass protection, for the most part, has been down with a couple of ups here and there. And even when you've had the ups, even when the pass protection has been there, like the Lions game or maybe the Browns game, Brendan, is it not really a lot of that being then because you're committing the extra resources to pass blocking, thus removing more resources out that he can go out there to throw to, which would be the exact same thing Drew Lock would have had to have dealt with. We come back to, you got to set the stage for quarterback success, and we have not done that so far from our coordinator, from our offensive line play, from how we run the football, to how we call the game plan itself. And that's what's holding this team back. It doesn't come really to Geno first and foremost for me at the centerpiece on this.
Yeah. At the end of the day, I think that even Geno Smith knows what Geno Smith is. He's a quarterback where you get out what you put in.
Yeah.
You put in good stuff, you're going to get good stuff. You put in bad stuff, you get bad stuff. He's, there are quarterbacks out there who you can give bad stuff and get good stuff out of. Like, I think that Zach Taylor is a pretty bad coach. I don't think Zach Taylor is good at all, but Joe Burrow takes that and produces really good stuff because he's Joe Burrow. Patrick Mahomes can take his garbage receiver core and produce with those guys, but Geno's not that.
Mm-hmm. And even with Holmes this year, you're seeing it's this. I mean, Holmes is a great example of this. Let's take a look at him. Comes into the league with Mitchell Schwartz and Eric Fisher on the edges and a good offensive line. Wins a Super Bowl, offensive line falls apart almost over an off season, goes back to a Super Bowl, fails because the offensive line can't pass protect in that Super Bowl. They go back, they rebuild it again. They get back and win another Super Bowl. You lose a playmaker because you're having to start to spend on Patrick. You lose Orlando Brown this offseason. The offensive line, maybe not quite as good. And even Patrick this year is not quintessential what we've seen exactly from Patrick Mahomes in recent years past. And even he, or even Burrow to a degree on that's I agree that those are kind of the only two guys that can really but even them are affected when the supporting cast starts to fail around them a little bit. And that's really what we have going on. I think not as much, it's that, and it's the Waldron experience we're going through right now.
So yeah, that I've kind of already said everything I think needs to be said about the Drew Lock thing. For Drew Lock to make sense, I think two things have to happen. One, Geno has to start playing much worse than he is right now, like significantly worse. And we need to be in a situation where we're either eliminated or basically eliminated from the playoffs. As of right now, we are a playoff team and we are a tiebreaker out of the division lead. Like, there's a lot to lose if you make a big gamble and you're wrong.
It's a great point. Informed by that, and if you look at the schedule, and you may be the most reticent person in looking at that 4-game stretch we have to face with the 49ers, Cowboys, and the Eagles, but the schedule looks imminently winnable outside of that. You could easily almost kind of moonwalk your way to 10 or 11 wins here with the schedule to a degree. I know that there's some I'm not saying there, but you just look at how the matchups face with us playing home when we're on the road. It's about getting this right. It's about fixing it. It's about, okay, this isn't working. What's not working? What do we got to start doing? These are the things that we got to start doing. And let's start working it into the offense. Let's start mixing the defense back into where we were getting them rolling a couple of weeks ago. There's time to round this into shape. We still have half a season nearly left of football games, but you're right. You can't bail now. You got to stick with this process and see if it can still round into shape. It's a long NFL season. You haven't played your best football yet. There's a lot of room to believe that you can play your best football over the course of this year if you can start to address these issues.
So yeah, I completely agree with everything you just said. There's still a lot of stuff in front of us. This team is 5-3. 9 days ago, by the way, Geno Smith led a game-winning touchdown drive against one of the top 3 defenses in the NFL, which I guess just goes to show that people have very short memories. I guess that's really all I can say about that. But yeah, that happened 9 days ago.
I've found this year that there's just folks that are to a degree out on Geno, and absent him going out there and throwing for 4,500 yards and 35 touchdowns, he was not going to bring them to his side. And there's been enough given to them from his play this year so far for it to build into I think a little bit of their biases that they have for him on that. And that's a little bit of, I think, what's put little bit of the fire that's pushing a bit of this movement, not all of it, but some of it.
I mean, yeah, I agree with that. Like, Geno could have given these guys $1 million and they still weren't going to really like him. Like, there's a lot like that. Oh, shoot. Sorry. Let's see here. So yeah, that's it about that one. Thank you again, Empower Code, for the $20.
I think we had another one, by the way.
Yeah. The Snail, thank you for the $2. B-Wags, better than Lewis because Bobby never murdered anyone.
That's fair. I think that's a fair assessment.
I looked into that once. I think it's pretty clear it was self-defense. Like, it was a long time ago that I looked into this, but I did because Ray Lewis was my favorite player for a long time.
Yeah.
And I looked into that and I was like, that sounds like self-defense to me, but I guess we'll never know.
We'll never know. And it's not like with Ray that he's got a whole vast history of that throughout his career or after his career in those kind of instances coming up. And that does, to your point, lead you to believe maybe it's a little bit more, of that. The guts to be on a street and look across at Ray Lewis and like, yeah, I'm going to take this guy. That's what's on the F around and find out kind of moments in life, isn't it?
Let's see here. WA Fish Quest, thank you for the $2. I'm happy Myers went 1 of 1, avoiding the shutout. Yeah, I guess Myers did good.
Yeah, he's been a bright part, at least the team, as far as him getting a lot. He's had a rough start to the year, but he's gotten back into hitting all his kicks. All his extra point kicks have gone through. He's been great.
I'm not giving him any leeway the rest of the season, though. He's missed 4. I'm not looking.
That's all he gets, Brendan.
Yeah.
Yeah, he needs to stay on point. We're going to need him this year.
Upo, thank you for the $20. London Fletcher, 20 less tackles than Ray Lewis in 1 less season, a Super Bowl win, and the best player in that Super Bowl. 39 sacks, 75 passes defensed, 23 interceptions, and 19 forced fumbles. Led league in pass deflections 3 times. Only 5'10", clearly a Hall of Famer. Yeah, can you talk a little bit about London Fletcher? I need to step away for a second here.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think London Fletcher was a really good player, Upo, and I think that he's going to be a good argument to be made on, what does where the longevity factor maybe overcomes necessarily needing to be great. He did compile a lot of statistics. I don't know how often he was. Let me look at a couple of stats here. The one thing we got to acknowledge too with this is that the Hall of Fame in many respects at this time has become more about the Hall of Good fully than it is about the Hall of Fame. But he was a 4-time Pro Bowler kind of right at the end of his career, finally there. Never a first-time All-Team, never second-team All-Time Pro, second-team All-Pro. The stats are definitely good, but he also, in a lot of like getting those sacks, for instance, if we put the comparison between Ray Lewis and London Fletcher, I would register to guess that London Fletcher played on a lot of teams that had he played all over the place, and he played some bad teams that had him eating up a lot of those empty tackles at the end of the game where the teams are just running on you constantly and you're just eating them up versus Ray Lewis, who's got his team up in a lot of the games he played in because they were so good, which caused offenses to pass, which is going to remove some of those, tackles. I do think he's going to get in, but probably more veterans crew, the veteran, there's a term for it when they, veteran committee, where they will have guys go in because of just the sheer total amount that he brought through. But it's tough with that one, Upo, because I don't know if there's any one point in time you said that he was one of the 2 or 3 best middle linebackers in the sport when he was playing during that time period. Should that be a part that factors in? I don't know. He's a complicated one, though. That one's not an easy one. I'll say that.
To me, putting London Fletcher in the Hall of Fame is the same as putting Frank Gore in the Hall of Fame. I don't think either guy should be allowed to visit the Hall of Fame as a guest, much less get in the Hall of Fame. Like, to me, it's a joke that either guy is either considered personally. Like, Frank Gore just basically he was never at any point in his career like a top 2 running back. He just played forever because he was already like really, really dumb when he entered the NFL. So he's like, I got no brain to kill. So I guess I'll just keep running. I'll running my head into defenders until I'm 80 years old because I'm already stupid. I can't get stupider.
It's true. I mean, Frank Gore did. He just kind of ended up adding, 500 yards a season at the end there. It's like just bit by bit. But yeah, I get where you're coming from on it. I can understand kind of both arguments with it. Part of it for my adjustment on this too, Brendan, is if it was still about the greatness of the Hall of Fame, if they weren't going to be letting guys in like Eli Manning in the foreseeable future, I might be a little more harsher on my outlook on London, but that you're going to let these guys in and that's the new standard. That's the standard, I don't like it, but those are the new rules we're playing by what it takes to get in, I guess.
Mm-hmm. And by the way, the reason why I say that about Frank Gore is not because I hate him. I think he actually
can't fair.
Yeah, I think he actually does not know how to read. I've read about this. He's one of those guys who gets like a 3 on the Wonderlic, I think.
He could read a hole, I'll tell you that.
Yeah. I mean, he was good for a very, very long time, but I want a good peak with my Hall of Fame players.
I think that's fair. Dude, you want them to be the Hall of Fame of great, not the Hall of Fame of very good.
Mm-hmm.
And it is sliding in that direction. It is undoubtedly, but.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, I like London Fletcher a lot. He had a great career, but I don't see a Hall of Famer there.
Yeah, it's fair. Fair take either way from my standpoint on it.
Adis, thank you for the $1.99. Waldron, for the last time, fix your damn offense. Well, you know, it is not in the habit of Pete Carroll to fire a coach mid-season, I think. I don't think that's the way he does things.
No, I don't think he is either. He'll definitely wait till the off season, but yeah, he needs to fix it. If you're going to go down as a coordinator, if you're going to fail, you know, I mean, I think this is something Schottenheimer would have told Waldron right now if he could talk to him, which is he'd tell him, you know, look, I've been in Seattle. I've been where you've been at. And when I walked in the door, I inherited 70% of my playbook. You're going to fail off this job and no one's going to give you any sort of room for, well, Coach Carroll forced you in the box with your playbook, so we'll give you the benefit of the doubt. It's not going to work that way. You know, whether you sink or swim, do it on what you do and what you want. And if you fail by that, taking your approach, so be it. But don't fail by removing half your playbook for the sake of, you know, having a more, you know, maybe I'll be able to preserve my job an extra year because I'll be doing what the coach wants me to do. If that's what's happening here, I don't know what's happening. Like I said, this is kind of beyond explanation for why the playbook and the offensive approach that they operate with every week is so how it looks right now, so different from where Waldron came from. But bottom line, Addis, fix the damn offense. That's whatever you got to do. Just get it done. Too much talent for them to be down in the marsh and mug and bog like they are right now.
Yeah, I was reading some stuff from Griff on X, you know, C Mike Spin Move, and his crew, and they were trying to talk about this, and what they basically said was that Waldron doesn't trust his offensive line, so he's abandoned the run. He's already decided we're just not going to run the ball that much because we can't. So therefore, he also doesn't trust the offensive line to hold up on third down. So he's trying to avoid third down altogether. That was basically the crux of what he was trying to present. I can't run the ball because 3rd and 3, 3rd and 4 is still a losing proposition for me. I need to convert first downs on 1st and 2nd down. And if you look at it, the Seahawks are a very successful offense on 1st down, fairly successful on 2nd down, and then they're the worst offense ever on 3rd down. Mm-hmm. And like, I read that and it makes sense to me, but then I'm like, if you don't trust your offensive line, then why aren't you playing more tight ends? So it's like there's a contradiction even wrapped in that.
Yeah, I don't know if it had that. I don't know if I can quite give that a lot of faith. For instance, let's just take this logically. My offensive line doesn't pass protect, so I'm going to run a lot of long developing routes down the field to put my poor pass protecting offensive line on a bind. As opposed to when I get 3rd and 4s, my offensive line doesn't have to hold up in pass protection as long because the routes don't need to be as long developing, and I can just get the ball out of my quarterback's hand quickly. So if you have a bad line, that's kind of the opposite of the direction that you're going to try to protect that offensive line from a philosophy standpoint. I think what he's trying to do and what we're all trying to do is find an answer to something that just doesn't make sense. That's what we're trying to do here to it. The bottom line is doesn't make sense. The bottom line is that you're not running an offense that's anywhere close. The pre and post snap motion. Just if you folks go get, if you got an NFL to subscription, go look at a Rams game. Watch what McVay does on an offense for a single series. Watch what he's doing with pre-snap motion, post-snap motion, flood zone concepts. Then go turn on the Seahawks tape and tell me that those are the two same offenses. I don't see it. And I don't have an explanation for it. This is not where this guy came from. This is not who he's supposed to be, but he's not running that offense. And not only is not running it kind of partially, at all. I see nothing that's even remotely kind of similar. There's probably some remote, you know, the reach blocks and that type of stuff. There's stuff that's similar, but there's no creativity or imagination. It's just stilted. Everything is just sitting dead still at the snap and predictable. Brendan, the Ravens defense was on every play this past week. To give you an, I mean, like you could just see them making every adjustment. When we made an adjustment, they made an adjustment. They knew what was coming. I know it's the elder Harbaugh brother, Brendan, that's supposed to be the cheater with the spying, but I felt like they had a camera in our practices on the offensive side of the ball by how, you know, in front of things they were and how much they were aware of what was coming prior to the play.
You know, on that topic, unironically, like this isn't even me joking. I'm wondering, and I've wondered this before, do we have a pre-snap tell on this offense.
I don't, yeah.
Several years ago, I remember this. Somebody on, at the time, Twitter had a thread with a bunch of screenshots showing how you could tell run or pass in the Seahawks offense by the way Germain Ifedi lined up pre-snap. And it was like, if I'm noticing this, the other teams are definitely noticing this.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if there's something like that going on here, where maybe the team isn't aware of it or they don't know how to fix it yet. But sometimes I feel like there's something giving away plays pre-snap on the Seahawks offense.
The whole part of this offense is you're bringing it in is it's not a complex offense where it's supposed, this is another part, Brendan, tell me if I'm lying on this. This offense is supposed to be able to run out 3 or 4 of the same personnel packages over the course of the game, but then they're going to run every kind of different offshoot out of that. And that's what makes them hard to predict post snap, offensively speaking, or it's supposed to make them hard to predict post snap. Okay. Do you see them running the same kind of formation play after play? Or do you see, like every other play, you're seeing different formation packages, different places they're lining them up, stacking the splits here, stacking the splits there, 2 tight ends over here, 3 tight ends over there? Does it look like, which one of those 2 would you say you see offensively week in and week out? No, I mean, as a question, which one do you think you lean towards seeing more? Do you see him just, here's the same formations all game long, but we're going to run every kind of little iteration off of it, or different? I see more of the latter, I guess. I'm seeing the latter. I'm seeing them trying to commit to being everything everywhere all the time offensively, rather than them having an identity or what they're doing. And so that's part of what makes it, to me, predictable, because they're like, oh, they're coming in with the 2 stacked receivers and the tight ends on the outside. When they do that, they do this. So we're locked in. We got it. And now they're coming to 3 tight ends to this side of the field. When they do that, that's this. Okay, we got it. Oh, they're coming. And that's what I think is going on a little bit here, is that you have your set things you run out of those kind of formations, but you're running so many varied formations, which again goes away from a little bit of what McVay does over there with the Rams.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with that. Now, maybe in this game, we saw mostly just 3 receiver stuff, because I went over the numbers. All 3 receivers had like 85-90% of the snaps, but that's not really moving the way we want it to move. And by the way, there's actually an even simpler element to this. Gino's numbers on play action this year are extraordinary. Yeah. Our one meaningful good play in this game was the 50-yarder to Metcalf off of play action. And it really feels like we're not running very much play action at all of a sudden. I know we're not running the ball well, but studies have been done. You don't need to run the ball well for play action to be effective. So the fact that we've gotten away from that feels downright, it feels like intentional sabotage. It's such a simple thing. And
do you remember the stat they showed, Brendan, in the game where it was in the second quarter and they showed the stat on that play action? This was before the DK play. And they showed Lamar and Gino on play action passes, and Gino was 1 of 1 for 18 yards. And then Lamar was like 4 of 5 or something down the other side of it. And this was halfway in the second quarter. And do you remember that stat being shown at the time in the game? I just remember thinking at the point going, why has he only got 1 attempt halfway in the second quarter, and you had success off that play action, and you've not gone back to it at all? Why would you leave that then? Why wouldn't you, much like to your point on DK, you don't get DK a target until you're 2.5 minutes left to go in the second quarter. DK finally gets his first target. Why? You can't scheme anything up for this guy? You've got nothing in your bag to get this guy opened up. We're watching offensive coordinators throughout the league, not only getting the most out of these number 1 wide receivers, but I mean, force feeding and getting just 175, 180, 90, 210 targets over the course of the year. I feel like at this place, we're going to be at pace to barely get him 100 for the year. And I don't really understand why. Doesn't make another one of those things. It doesn't quite add up. What's holding this back here? Is it maybe the injuries with DK, I guess? I don't know.
I mean, I don't think so. He's getting open. He's definitely getting open. There's no doubt in my mind about that. Watching what do they call it? The 2022. Yeah. Let's see here. Corey Olson, thank you for the $5. Would DK look like AJ Brown if he was the one traded to Philly, or if he was on a KC team? Are we underutilizing him too much talent to be this bad? Yeah, that's an interesting one, because AJ Brown's on a historic tear right now.
Yeah. My gut instinct on this would be that AJ Brown is a bit better receiver than DK Metcalf. Is he head and shoulders above DK? Is he like vastly beyond? No. But is he a little bit better, especially with the ball skills in the air, contested catches? Some of that stuff I think might be a little bit better with AJ, with his hands and whatnot. But they're both tremendous players, and you could be getting way more out of DK, which is the bottom line. we're not close to maxing out his potential or the production that he could bring to the field. And part of the reason, for instance, Brown's able to do what he's done is if you have Philly and Hurts, who's got a ground game that's working, he's got an offensive line that can pass protect and give him the time to get the ball to that guy and let him flourish. The things that we're missing right now, which is probably one of the big differences between those two teams as to why they're able so very often to get it to AJ versus us who seem to forget DK's on our team for about half the game sometimes. But that's where we come back to that, me being the piece on this. You got to run the ball better. You got to pass protect better if you're going to get more out of the offense as a whole and DK with it.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, we've seen it be good as recently as this year. We scored 37 points in back-to-back games in weeks 2 and week 3. We've seen good stuff before. And again, it seems like it would be simple. Use more tight ends, use more play action. These are the things that worked really well against the Lions. Defense is pretty good, by the way, just putting that out there. Panthers defense, I mean, nothing about that team is really good right now, but their defense is by far the best part of that team. Like, we saw it work, and then you just go away from it. It seems like the solution should be pretty simple.
It does, which should maybe give us a little more faith and optimism that they'll find their footing on this eventually. But that does seem to be the clear, concise spot to go to find some, if not a fix, to here's some answers. If you're looking for what answers, what can we do to, well, here's some very straightforward answers that make a lot of sense.
Adis, thank you for the $1.99. Can never have a good offense and defense at once.
We could have them both bad at once. We proved that last week.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to happen eventually, right? If both units are good. And I'm not sure about that. I think this offense will eventually snap out of it because there's too much talent and the fixes are too simple. Like, I think a grade schooler could understand how to fix this offense pretty good. The defense, I don't know. Well, I could go one way or the other with the defense. Right now, I think I looked it up today. In terms of points per game allowed, the defense is 22nd in the league, which is slightly better than last year, but nowhere near good or even average. But they were hot for about a month there. They were really hot for about a month. I do acknowledge that the Ravens might just be a bad matchup, and they're going to have opportunities against pretty good offenses later down the line to prove they've progressed. They're going to get to play Philly. They're going to get to play San Fran. And we'll see if they can develop over the next month.
Well, I think just buried a little bit in your question, Addis, on that is, how good is this team? Brendan mentions they're 22nd defensively. That's playing PJ Walker, Dalton as a backup with Carolina. The backup we played on the other week that I'm forgetting about. So how has the defense taken those steps forward? You got your first really big challenge here. They did good against the Bengals. They had a good hot run there, but that's sample size. This is why I always say we got to give the whole season to kind of make our full assessment of where things stand. But the same thing is true of the offense. I think they're better than they are. But at one point or another, we're halfway into the year. They're going to have to start showing that is who they are, or you just eventually kind of are what you are with that, And there is time to fix this. There is time to find resolution. And both me and Brendan, this is not empty optimism on our part. We have a lot of reason to believe that they can find some success through the rest of this year. But to your point, big tests are coming down the line, and both sides of this football need to prove where they're standing, so we have a better understanding of where this team is as we go through the off season.
Wes Hyatt, thank you for the $1.99. People saying start Drew Lock, thumbs down. Penix looks elite. Well, if you want to hear us talk a lot about this upcoming rookie class, including quarterbacks like Michael Penix, you should tune in tomorrow about 5:00. And both our channels again. It'll be hosted on the Hawks Nest, but streamed everywhere. And we're going to talk a lot about guys like Michael Penix.
100%, Wes. We're going to dive into this at 5:00 tomorrow, and Penix will be a guy that we do discuss a lot about. First off, Drew Lock, you can hear with both me and Brendan, we are in 100% agreement with you on that. It's just, this is not the answer. There are some answers to be had here. That's not the answer. That's one of them that we should be looking at on the table, in my opinion. Penix, there's no doubt about it. From an arm talent standpoint, I think he can ride with anybody in this draft. I think he's got this arm strength, the accuracy, the ability to put the ball in just the right place. It's going to be the tough part when it comes down to Penix on about two main items. The injury, of course, is one. The age is one, maybe three items. The one thing that I worry about with him is, am I going to be able to keep the clean pocket put together for him to, overcome a little bit of not necessarily high-end mobility, And then number two, to make sure that that injury factor doesn't come into play more heartily. Because if he's going to get beat around and bashed up like a lot of times a first round quarterback will by the environment that they're getting put into, Brendan, I think he's going to get injured pretty quick. You can put him into an environment with an offensive line like, let's say, the Eagles are giving Hurts, which he's probably not likely to get. Then he's going to, I think, have a much better chance to excel. But Penix and him excelling and him being productive are going to be very much based upon where I know this is true of all quarterbacks, but him especially, on where he goes in the environment he's in.
Yeah. Penix is really tough for me. Just to spoil it a little bit, I do have a first round grade on him, but I did not feel good about it at all. It was one of those things where I tried to find 32 guys I thought were better than him, and I couldn't do it. But I feel like there should be. Like that injury history, the fact that you almost have to put him in a Pope mobile in your offense. I really don't think it's going to work in the NFL, but he's playing so well and he's doing such a good job with the things he can control. Like at a certain point, you got to give it to him, right? Like it's really tough. I had a really hard time with evaluating Penix.
I struggle with it too. I do. He's not an easy eval. He's really not. But the production he's had the past couple of years, this is what you seek out of a quarterback you're going to be picking. Is he's all those starts under center, all that action. He's going to be ready to go pretty much day one. You're not going to have to look at him and go, "Well, I'll sit him for a year or two." No, you can put him out there and play. But the Huskies have done a great job the past 2 years of keeping a clean pocket for him. And we talk about manufacturing ways for Geno to get the ball out of his hands. Like they need to take a page out of the Huskies book and what they've done with Penix at times, and just being able to get that ball out of his hands so he's not taking any necessary hits at all.
Mm-hmm. And I just don't think you can do that in the NFL. Like you can do it in college, but that's my hang up. That's my hang up with Penix. But a lot of time to talk about that tomorrow. I will acknowledge the fact that he is in this draft anyway. I think at this point he's going to go in the first round, and I think he deserves it. But you better be ready to invest your next couple drafts in offensive line if you make that your pick.
100%. One's got to go with the other if you're going to do that. You cannot put this guy behind him like, well, he'll just try to be a magic man back there. That's not who he is. But he could be a good quarterback in this league if you put the right lineup in front of him.
I feel like the Raiders are going to take him, and it's going to be a complete disaster. I don't know. That just feels right, doesn't it?
It does. No, this is what's going to happen is, what I think is, if I may read into what you're saying a little bit in your difficulty with Penix, is that I don't really like put him in the first round, but there's also there'll be a team that will grab him in there. We could see any number of about 5-6 teams in the top 15 that are going to be like salivating with where their situation's at.
If he wins the Heisman, which I think he will, then I mean, he's not an overwhelming favorite anymore because he had 2 kind of weird games, but I think he will win it. It's kind of a 3-man race right now, I think, between him, JJ McCarthy, and Jaden Daniels.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he will win it, and I think it will be hard for him to not go in the top 20 if he does win it. But I got to tell you, I think it ends poorly. I just have a bad sense.
I can see it. I can see why. There's a lot of room for having that kind of worry on this one. It's all the age, the injuries. It's valid all the way down the line on it.
Mm-hmm. Let's see here. Feed me more Seahawks. Thank you for the $2. Who on the LOB will make the Hall of Fame?
Sherman will be the only guy, other than Wagner. Wagner and Sherman will be the 2 guys who make the Hall of Fame. Yeah,
I think I agree. I think Earl would have made it, but there's so much stuff going on there. It's never going to happen now. I feel like if Earl had kept his career going another couple years and not gone crazy and not had all the stuff happen, he would have. He, I think, is, in terms of on the field stuff, the best safety of his generation. So it's really too bad things went the way that they did. Earl was my favorite player for a while.
Yeah, both in Earl and Cam's case, fantastic players, but longevity is a part of it. And both are missing it. In Earl's case, just a little bit less than Cam is. He's missing a little bit more, but they're great players, but just not enough time in the league.
Yeah, I think Cam made All-Pro second team twice, and his career was not that long, not enough, not good enough.
No, especially because he sat his first year behind Lawyer Lemoy. So
yeah, he's more somebody that there are these players that the teams love, the teams adore, but the rest of the league doesn't really get it because you can't it's like Wayne Corbett almost. It's like Jets fans love Wayne Corbett, right?
That's right.
But I think most other fans of other teams would look at that guy and go like, oh, what's so great about this guy? And it's like, you had to be there. You trust me, you don't get it. You can't get it because you're not a Jets fan.
100%. No, I feel the same way about that, where I go, I don't see it on that one. Or Teddy Bruschi. How about that with the New England Patriots? Another kind of guy like that. You know, they love him, but it's not a Hall of Famer. Really good player, but not a Hall of Famer kind of guy.
Heath Miller, guys like that. It's like you just you love them, but if you be objective about it, there's no Hall of Fame argument for it.
Yeah. Yeah, especially if we're trying to keep a little bit of the hallowed ground in the Hall of Fame, which this is important to me. And it's this part of what I talked with you a little earlier about the Hall of Good, is it should be the Hall of Great. It should be hallowed ground. It should be for the best of the best of the best, not for, people that are fan favorites. Yeah.
So in going through all those super chats, I think we did a pretty good job chopping up through the offense. I guess the closest thing to a silver lining on that offense would probably be Lockett. He had a couple nice catches to convert first downs. I think he had our 1 third down conversion of the day. So the good stuff kind of starts and ends there.
Pretty much does so. I mean, the backs did with what they could for the most part, but they didn't give many opportunities enough to make much of any kind of assessment of anything with that. And, Cross held up relatively well in pass protection. Run blocking was But, I mean, there's not a lot else, to be said about that. They got Jackson Smith involved a little bit. He took the top off the defense on a 9 route, but, was there a lot of measured impact by what he brought or so far? He had a bad drop at the opening. Man, that was just a brutal opening drop, man, because that's where you're wanting to get some momentum going and establish a bit of a tone. And it's right there as an easy completion. Gino makes the right read, perfect pass, and he bobbles it. Yeah, boy, that was just tough. But not a lot to talk of the good performances on the line. We talked to a couple of guys. Evan Brown, I think, had a rough day. Stone Forsythe's not a right tackle in this league.
And Peters, I thought, had a pretty bad game for the little bit he played. I guess, man, I'm just trying to think of something to hang.
It's hard to knock. It's hard to not. I mean, the tight ends we can maybe ding for some of the blocking in this game, but especially on, all of them had one single target all the way down the line. And Colby had to make a one-handed catch just to bring that one in. So like, you just didn't even target the tight ends. You can't really say it's like, well, they failed to get over, failed to do it. You haven't even tried to work them into the offense at all in this game.
Another play where DK Metcalf gets open in the end zone this time for a touchdown. And it's like, people keep saying Gino and DK need to get on the same page. I don't even think that's what it is. The ball just wobbles 2 yards short of where Metcalf is wide open in the end zone. And look, obviously, if DK catches that pass, we still lose this game. But that was a big moment in that game. There was 14-0. We've got a good drive going. DK's open for a touchdown, and Gino just 2-hops it to him. And I don't know what's going on. I'm not seeing that level of inaccuracy when he's throwing to most of these other receivers. It's bizarre. It feels there has to be some reason for it, but I don't see it as being not on the same page. I just see it as like, for some reason, when he throws the ball to Metcalf, the ball comes out of his hand weird.
It does. And beyond out of his hand, just his inaccuracy too. There was a 9 route in this game where he's trying to throw it to DK, and another one of those throw it out of bounds on a 9 route rather than giving DK a chance to make the catch. Like, give him a chance. He's 6'4" on a smaller corner. Give him an opportunity. Why is this such a hard concept for you, Gino? But the ball just like drifts its ass out of bounds on him down the field. There's another one, Brendan, where end of the game where DK's running in the back of the end zone, right? And you've got a safety sitting in the back of the end zone, and he's squatted down. He's not moving. And Gino's rolling to his right as the play's playing like this, where this is DK, here's Gino. And Gino has a couple seconds there. If he just lets DK clear the squatting safety and puts it to the back corner with some anticipation on the throw and throw it up a little bit, let DK run under it, he's going to have a touchdown there. But he throws it right at DK, right at the safety where the safety's at. The safety ends up getting a hand on it. And on that play, you're going, give him a chance. I don't understand why it's such a hard. You have this big receiver. The point is to give him an opportunity from time to time. And on that throw, watching especially the L22 and the timing of it, where Geno had another 4 or 5 steps till he gets to the out of bounds marker, where he can kind of give it that extra second to let it play out a little bit longer. Guys are pursuing him, but he's free and clear of the pocket. He's not under duress. Let it clear a little bit more, and then just throw it up with a little bit of pop. There's no other underneath defenders, it's like 4 or 5 yard line. It's all clear in the back right of that end zone on that play. He's got to find a way with DK on making some of these throws to give him at least a chance. Doesn't mean it's going to be a completion, but at least have a completion where you're getting a hand on the ball and not a defender's first getting their hand on the ball, as occurred on that play.
Yeah, those are the things that are making me worried about Geno. Like, people look at these plays where he's getting pressured by 800 defenders within half a second of the snap, and they're trying to put that on Geno. There was a bunch of stuff on Corbin Smith on X earlier today. People sending like screenshots of like, oh, why didn't he throw it here? Why didn't he throw it there? Meanwhile, Geno's getting harassed by a bunch of defenders in the backfield already anyway. You're looking at all this stuff, and it's like, I don't understand why that stuff's on Geno, but this stuff that we're talking about, like, you did have an opportunity to maybe at least seize a little bit of momentum. Like I said, that touchdown he missed to Metcalf, the game was not over at that point. It's a different game if you hit Metcalf there and you go up 14, or you're now 14-7. And Geno was the most accurate quarterback in Seahawks history last year.
Yeah.
And honestly, so far this year, his CPOE is still incredibly high. He has one of the highest CPOEs in the league, which is completion percentage above expected, over expected rather. So he's still accurate, but there's something going on. I'd say his hand is injured, like Justin Herbert style, but I'm not seeing it come out that way when he's thrown to these other receivers.
No, I don't think that he's dealing with anything major injury. Maybe even the leg from the Giants game still kind of give him some dodginess. But this is where we go to the place of it's okay to throw some shade. There is some validity in putting something on Geno on this to say this. He does got to be better. It's just where we got to stop short of saying let's throw the whole heaping on top of him, or even versus saying where's the majority go to. He's got to play better. There's some bad throws, bad decisions, no doubt about it. But this is when we're unpacking on this show. There's a variety of different problems here at play. It's not just a singular thing.
Yeah, we already briefly talked about the idea of the Seahawks abandoning the running game because they don't trust that it's going to work because of the offensive line. And you basically said you're not really buying that. I mean, if you want to peel into that a little bit more.
Yeah, it's just that doesn't add up to me, because what you're trying to avoid as a coach, 3rd and 7s and 3rd and 8s are brutal for offensive lines. Doesn't have to be the 3rd and 12s. 3rd and 8s alone for a receiver to get up the field, off press coverage, get up to 12 yards, break out of their route, get separation so that you can make your throw. That's going to take that 3+ seconds. I got to hold the ball in the line to let those develop. And that just means your line's got to hold up longer in pass protection, which your line has done the opposite of this year so far. There's no reason that Waldron would have confidence to believe that that's going to be something he can rely upon. Even coming back in this game with, an extra healthy offensive lineman, it still is what it is. And you knew what you were dealing with this Ravens defense. So you weren't going to just slide into that. Like, I can trust him on that. It just doesn't add up to me that you would bail off in that way. What I think's mostly hindering the run game, I think that this is mostly, I know sometimes Carroll blows some smoke. Sometimes he gives us some answers, though, that are the truth. And when he said that when you're 1 for 12, it's really hard to run the ball because you're not converting. You're not getting to another set of downs to run the ball. It run it on this series or you get nothing. And then that's going to end up driving you a little bit more into a pass happy approach, I think, when you can't convert. And so converting some more 3rd downs would be probably a better pathway to me to being able to run the ball a little bit more and run more consistently. Do we got to commit to it more? Was it much, to me, is much more a problem, for instance, last week against the Browns. I had much more of an issue in that game where it was 3-1 and it was a close game and you were bailing off the run in that after like half a quarter in, you're like, we're done. So that one I have a bit more of an issue with, but in this particular one, it was such an extreme slant of the lack of 3rd down conversions that you didn't have an opportunity. There was really not much of a chance, I think.
There's one other angle that I want to spend a minute on here with regard to the running game. PFF had some more data, and there's this great account on X. I think his name is Arjun Menon. He was an analytics guy for the Jets, I believe, for a while. I don't know. I don't think he's still there, but he posts a lot of obscure numbers on Twitter. It's some really cool stuff. I recommend you go check him out. So he posted this one that was really interesting. Percentage of running plays where the running back does not go into the intended gap. So do you kind of understand what that's trying to keep track of? How often does a team run the ball and then the runner goes somewhere that was not the intention of the play when it was drawn up?
Yes.
The Seahawks are number one in that category by far, 26% approximately. And they are not very successful at it. They have a below average success rate on those plays, right? And he posted a separate chart that had percentage of run plays that were blocked perfectly. And the Seahawks were ranked near the top. They actually were like 11th, so above average to good. Now, there's more data that needs to be there for it to be definitive. We need to see what percentage of plays are okay blocked, which ones are good, which ones are average, which ones are terrible. But what I got from that is part of the problem that mostly Ken Walker, is he improvising a little too much, do you think?
Well, I think first off, with Ken Walker and drafting him, you're drafting a guy that you're going to want to take advantage of that skill set that he has to bounce the ball upside. So you're naturally, with him being your number one running back in your offense, are going to be probably one of the league leaders in having the ball bounced outside, because that's, it's a sword that cuts both ways, but it also cuts to where he gets a lot of real big runs out of there. We always, in my opinion, have to take the analytics and marry them with the eye test. That's the important part of this. It always is. And that the analytics have a place to be, but the eye test also has to be the part that we bring in as much as we possibly can. In watching all of the football games as you have this year, and watching all of the all 22 games as you have this year, have you seen the offensive line creating holes consistently?
I mean, not in the running game, not really, admittedly.
So, I mean, this stat's great, but the problem is when I pair this stat with the eye test, I see the very same thing, Brendan, which I don't see holes. I rerun the all 22, looking, checking, where could he gone? Where was the read to make on this play? And when he's bouncing it outside, he's having to bounce it outside, because is there a couple mistake points you could probably find every game of where, well, shouldn't have bounced that one outside. Yeah, but then is he bouncing it outside now because he's learning not to trust the interior blocking because he knows that those guys are going to fail so often as they are? Probably starts to, this is the accumulation thing that's hard, I think, for people to register, where stuff starts to add up over time, right? I start out in game 1 as a running back. I'm trusting my holes. I get to game 7 and I haven't had considerable holes or any holes to really run through. I'm going to be getting way more creative than I ever have in my life because of that. And then in some of that creation, I'm going to make some bad decisions from it too, but it's the accumulation of that. And we come back to symptom, root cause, symptom, root cause, symptom. Run blocking gets better. Running back gets more productive. Now, I know that stat goes kind of in the head against that. I'm not trying to totally tear that stat away, but I just don't see where in that stat, Brendan, in my mind and watching the eye test, where I'm going, oh, look at that monster hole Walker just bounced. I can't think of one play where there's some monster hole this year where Walker you could have just taken it right up in there. Instead, you bounced it way out over there. You know, I mean, really, you want the run game struggles, lack of commitment, and we don't run the ball outside. That kind of makes it easy for us to prepare for, right? Let's keep unpacking this. I know the Seattle Seahawks are not going to run a pitch play over the whole course of the whole game. Maybe one. I know they're going to run maybe one fly sweep over the whole course of a game. I know that with absolute 100% certainty every time I face the Seattle Seahawks offense. I also know 90 to 95% of the run are going to be in the A and the B gaps, not even the C gaps. They're just going to live in the A and B gaps. Doesn't that probably mean that every time if I got a run play and I see it post-snap as a run play as a defense, I'm probably going to get slanting to the interior of the line and close those holes up, which then causes the backs to have to bounce away from the holes?
So at the end of the day, you think this is more offensive line than running back as an issue? Offensive line
scheme, in the respect of, like I said, you don't utilize the lateral element of the run game. And this is, again, post-snap motion, a lack of utilizing the outside run game. These are the common elements in offenses that are hyper successful in this modern NFL age. And we're not utilizing those elements, and we're not finding success. I think we can overthink certain things to a degree, and this is one of those things that can get overthought too much. You're running a rudimentary approach to your offense, and it's very predictable for defenses. They're predicting correctly, and you don't have an adjustment to counter that. I think it does kind of get very simplistically to that stage, at least when it comes to the running game. And if they were to run some more damn pitch plays and some more fly sweeps and to make these defenses now have to be more disciplined to their edges at times, I think they would find some more success on top of being more consistent in your use of it, of course, game in and game out.
All right. So I just wanted to spend a little bit of time on that because I thought that was really interesting that Seahawks running backs improvise considerably more than any other team's running backs. Like that means something. Either the running backs are dancing way too much or the offensive line isn't doing their job. It's got one of the two.
And the fact that we could put a guy like Charbonnet, who was a decisive runner with UCLA, I know he only has 32 carries, but his 32 carries factor into this, right? And the fact that you have him in factoring into this, a part of this where he's not lowering that number down, shows you that he's having to bounce it outside too, and that's really not his game. He wants to just make it simple, and that's the hole you want me to go to. That's where I want to go, so I can get my head down and go. But when that closes up and I got to go redirect, it's telling you that I think there's an issue here. There's something at play here with your ability to run block and open those holes. It's backed up too by the grades, right? I mean, how's Damian Lewis's run block grade this year? What is it, 40? What's Phil Haynes at, 45? I mean, Cross, awful. Jake Curhan, awful. Stone Forsythe, let's go through. Stone Forsythe, awful. The only run blocker you've had of any value on this team so far, front side or backup, has been Mr. Bradford. That's been it.
Now, none of this will matter in a year when Cooper Bebe comes to save.
That's right, baby. Cooper Bebe. That's right. Let's go.
Or Graham Barton. I actually really like both guys.
I'll take either one, man. Either one. I'll put a big old smile on my face.
Yeah. Let's see here. Adis, thank you for the $1.99. Off topic. Have we decided a name yet for Spoon?
I got to run the poll. I always keep forgetting to do it, Addis, and I got to run it here eventually. So we're going to try to decide at some point. I got a huge list of names, but we got to let the fans decide on this one. I got a prefer. I like 21 Savage best, but we got to put it to the fans on this one.
I feel I'm very adamant. The nickname cannot have the word Spoon in it. It doesn't work. Yeah. The more I listen to it, the more I'm like, Spoon is inherently not a intimidating word.
No,
it's not a good word for a nickname.
No, he's violent. He's aggressive. He's chippy. He's he's quick. Like Spoon captures none of that. and so I agree. We got to bail off the Spoon application of it. But we'll put the poll to my chat. I've got a huge long list of about 30 potential names that we can throw into the pot and see what comes out.
Let's see. So, like I said at the top of the show, I suspect, I think what's going to happen here is that we got to get through 2 more games at right tackle with what we have, and then Lucas has a chance to come back for that 4-game stretch. That's kind of what I'm expecting. So, Commanders and Rams, we got to get through without him.
That's right.
How are you doing this? You've got Forsythe, you've got Peters, and you've got Curhan. What are you doing here?
Well, you got to find some balance offensively. And we've talked about it, I think, Brendan, which is more utilization of 2 and 3 tight end sets, more of a commitment to the running game, but more of a utilization of pre and post snap motion, more of a utilization of the screen game. If you're going to get blitzed to death, like you did this past week against the Ravens, more flexibility and imagination offensively, less of just leaning on A and B gap runs and taking 9 route throws over the top all day. All of that applied along these lines offensively is going to bring, I think, improvement, especially against these next 2 upcoming opponents, and try to start to build an identity over these next 2 games. I mean, that's maybe above getting to the intricate details of this, Brendan, whether I have the right answers or not. If I may be completely out of pocket, what I'm suggesting, if Coach Carroll would be sitting here shaking my head by hearing what I'm saying, okay, fine, Coach Carroll. Find an identity though. Pick a lane. What do you want to be offensively going forward through the rest of this year? Because right now you have no identity. You're the faceless man from whatever. You're everything everywhere. You got to choose what you want to be, and then lean into that and make that your identity, and try to get that rolling by the time you hit that cluster of games that you talked about, so that maybe you're now starting to turn this in the right direction.
So you don't really care who plays as long as you commit to one of those options, basically. Curhan,
to me, it's a commitment to the McVay offense. That's really the bottom line on it. You're not running that offense right now. That's what Waldron's supposed to come from. He has it. He knows how to do it. He's shown that he could do it those first 12 games last year. That was a lot more closer to the McVay offense. Yeah, you use three tight end sets, which is a little bit, but McVay's used 2 tight end sets too. When he goes away from 3 wide receivers, he often goes to 2 tight end sets. That is a part of the McVay offense. But the key being is that you're not easy to predict post snap. The key being that you're using pre and post snap motion. It's all of that. It's all of that together. And all of that is not being utilized throughout the course of pretty much any game throughout this season. It's been absent in every single one, all of those individual items I mentioned. You start utilizing those items, you'll find more success in this offense because that's the offense you've constructed. It's you fitting to the plan, to what you've tried to build here, both in the personnel you brought in and the talent you have across the board and the way you can attack. But again, just befuddles my mind that this is such a hard part for this to come through for them because they're not trying it. It's a thing if you try and you fail. It's another thing when you don't try it and you're not trying these things. One fly sweep a game is not trying it. That's like kind of just what is that? That's like a tease, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Would you just sit Haynes and go with Bradford for the rest of the year? Where are you on that one?
Yeah.
You would?
Yeah. At this point, to me, with this point in Haynes, I don't know what he brings. I don't know. The pass protection is not holding up. That was supposed to be kind of your thing. You don't open any holes in the run game. You never have. You're not going to now as we go into the future of this season, especially with the opponents getting more tougher. At least with Bradford, he brings an edge and a mentality to play that not a lot of other guys on this offensive line are bringing. You know, who's a bully down that line right now? I mean, Lucas brings it when he's in there, but that's not Cross's game. It's not Evan Brown's game. It's not become Damian Lewis's game anymore as he's gone along in this league. You need a little more attitude. And you need a little bit more of a guy that'll go out there and flatten some guys on their backs out there, especially in the run game.
Yeah, I think I'm there too. I think I'm at that point as well.
Yeah.
My hang up is Bradford barely practiced last week, so I bet he's like hampered significantly.
He is
just
injured.
Like everyone else on this offense. Yeah, unfortunately.
That's the great equalizer. I don't want to trot him out there if he's beat up. But if we're talking about setting him up and Lucas up, I kind of like the idea of, okay, he's had him out 2 games, and then you get that next game, and then maybe run him out there with Lucas and see how the combination of those 2 guys on one side of the line works, especially as maybe a focal point for your rushing attack to go after. Because now you got 2 guys that should be plus run blockers at their spot over there. Put a tight end like Disley on that side, who's also a good run blocker. Maybe now you can start opening some holes.
Or maybe it could be like a closer in baseball where you put Curhan in at the end of the game when you have the lead. You put Curhan at right tackle, and then you've got Bradford, Curhan, Disley, and you just run the ball to their side every play.
That's right. Well, Carroll's already told he likes doing these rotational offensive lines, so he's already embraced that part.
Yeah, you could even like have Enter Sandman playing on the loudspeaker when the guy comes into the game.
Yeah, they got some signature music.
You could even have like the Abe Lucas wave to the crowd as he comes off.
That's right.
You know, I read some stuff. I remember back in the day, people said that back when Andy Reid was a really bad end of game manager, they said they should get like a closer. They should get like a closer coach to come in for Andy Reid in the last 5 minutes of a close game and just have it treat it like baseball. And I don't know. I mean, that'd be funny. It'd be really funny to see Andy Reid walk off the field, go into the locker room, wave goodbye to all the Eagles fans. At the time, Eagles fans. So I don't know. Something there.
Maybe. We got to say, if the offense doesn't start getting some answers here, you have to start thinking pretty far outside the box here. So we might eventually arrive at that point.
But I guess that's about it for the offense. We talked about Geno, receivers, tight ends, running backs, offensive line. Not really any of it worked on Sunday. And it's too bad that that's going to be the defining game of this team for a while, right? Because when a game like that happens, it's going to be really hard for people to start taking you seriously again. It's like when the Cowboys played that game against the Niners a month ago. Like, to me, that is still the game that defines what the Cowboys are right now, a team that will get punched in the mouth and get dominated by a real contender. And that's where we are. Especially
because you have the Rams game on the book as well this year, which was every bit as, if not even more so, an embarrassing game than this one to me. And that's where you go, yeah, that stain's not going to rub off just with a couple wins these next couple of weeks. And I have a lot of faith in this team where they're going, but for this team to prove to me that this year they can be more than just a merely good team that sort of slides into the back door of the playoffs, they're going to have to make some noise against some quality opponent at some point this year that's not named the Detroit Lions.
Yeah, and no disrespect to the Browns, by the way. I do think that Browns team is pretty good, but they're
They're good, but you got PJ Walker, their third quarterback that they're two, and you got no Nick Chubb. I mean, that's not a team that you're facing at that point that's anywhere near the kind of challenge. That's again, it's a little bit of, to me, that's what kind of can fool us a little bit. And it's what fool you got Dalton, who's the other Josh Dobbs. You're facing these quarterbacks, and it's like, well, okay, you're winning.
This is not the week to disrespect Josh Dobbs.
Oh,
He just won a game with a bunch of teammates that he didn't even know the name of.
I know, but I mean, it's Josh Dobbs is who he is, of course. He is what he is. But I want to see us going up against a true tough test and actually rise to that challenge and not just have to beat on the weaker teams of the NFL in order to accumulate a record that gets to 10 wins, which has the possibility of happening here. I mean, the Steelers team and where they may be at the end of the year, and especially if they're out of competition, and if they've decided by that point Pickett's not the guy, you get the Cardinals again, the Rams again, this Washington team that's just dumped its two edges, and we'll be getting into that matchup on Thursday. But you have some games on the schedule in addition to some of the games you've had that have not been exactly the biggest of challenges out there against you. You're not going to have some insane schedule you've had to go through this year, absent this last game you played, the Bengals, and that stack of a cluster of other games. So let's see where the team is at that point. Everything's still within our grasp to reach to a contender stage, Brendan. Let's just say that as well, that this isn't that we can't get to a contending stage. We absolutely can, but we got a lot of work to done to get there. We're not like one this and one that, little turn of the screw, little twist of the knob, little pull of the dial. No, you got a lot to fix. Ground game, offensive creativity, a defense to find some more consistency, rediscover their approach in stopping the run. But they've got the talent to do it. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, and they've got time to fix it. Again, I don't think Carroll's the kind of guy who's going to fire a coach mid-season. They've got the rest of this season to figure it out. That maybe Mike Holmgren would have been a guy to fire a coach mid-season. I could have seen that.
He would have waited too. He was out of his guys' back. The firing mid-season thing just doesn't. People can call for that. That doesn't do any real good, and it's not going to help the team out by taking that approach with it. And people are really jumpy right now to make some assessments of this team and have final conclusions they reach really quickly. Just give it to the end of the year. Let it play out. There's nothing to be gained by jumping to a conclusion right now and saying, I think this about the team, that's what they is, versus giving it the additional 7 more games we've got to go out there and play. And then or whatever we've got left to play to see where this actually ends up, settling in at.
I mean, the one example that was good was the Ravens team that won the Super Bowl. They had, I think, Cam Cameron as their offensive coordinator, and then they fired him with like 5 games left in the regular season. Mm-hmm. And they didn't lose a game the rest of the way, I don't think. Like,
I think that's right.
I think that's right. Like the one example of like a good team firing a coach midway through the season because they were like, this isn't good enough and we need to win the Super Bowl now.
But of course, that's the anomaly. And we don't ever like to count on the anomaly because that's the exception to the rule, not the rule itself. The rule itself being that you tend to switch out coordinators mid-year. By and large, you ain't getting any better results by doing that in the long term of that. And that's what you got to lean on to versus the one time it's happened in 20 years where it's actually did work. And it had great success. I give you that. They found some awesome success to it. But that's probably the one example you could really find of that occurring and happening versus all the other points where it either was exactly the same or it went a little bit worse when you made the change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there may have been another example in history that I'm not thinking of, but it's usually something you do when the season's over and you're just trying to you're trying to basically get a head start on finding the next guy.
Yeah, exactly.
And regardless of what a surprising number of Seahawks fans seem to think, our season is not over. Where some of these people, I think the multiverse opened up and some of these people jumped in from a different universe where the Seahawks are like 1-7 or something with the way they want to blow everything up now. And it's not the case. There's a lot to lose if this season goes off the rails because you decided to make some massive wholesale change.
Yeah, there's people chomping at the bit. Some are done with Carroll, some are done with Gino. I love the fact that we've got a competitive fan base that wants to be better. I don't want to tamper down that instinct. But at the same point in time, I'm also seeing a lot of real quick conclusions being reached by people at times. It feels a lot like there was a bias walking into the season by where you stood. And the second that you get data that reinforces that bias, you're going to jump all over that and say, see, I was right. We got to get everybody out of town. Got to go do it now. And my whole point is that we can reach that conclusion in state, but let's just wait to the end of the year. Let's let it all play out before we get there. There's no reason outside of you want to be the first person to say, oh, see, I got to be the first person to say that we need to fire everybody and I was right. Well, congratulations. Here's a star for you. You got to be the first guy that could write, but it's not very productive. And it's not really going to change anything by going to that. There's no major change that they need to make right now that's going to save this year. They got to trust the process and what they got. They got to ride with what they got and hope it gets better and hope it improves, especially on the back of making some tangible adjustments that are easily there to be seen to be made. But the want of change and stuff, I know that there are those that are chomping at that, but I can feel it in my chat every single time I go live. There's a big contingent that comes on in and like, I'm done with Pete. Get Pete out. I'm done with Gino. I'm done with this team. Done with new ownership. I get it. I do get it. The part I come to is say, just give it to the end of the year. And then we can if that's the place we got to arrive at, if this team's fallen on its face, it's not taking steps forward. Carroll's shown you he's not the man. Waldron's shown you the offense is in the tank. Then we'll all get to that place at that point in time, make that assessment. Me and Brendan will call it for what it is at that point, but nothing to be lost by giving it the season to kind of play out to see where it really is truly going to go.
Mm-hmm. A couple of last donations here. Daniel Bailey, thank you for the $4.99. It's been 48 hours. That loss hurt, but we're 5-3 and can be 7-3 walking into Thanksgiving and take the division. Let's take care of business. Go Hawks.
Go Hawks. We can grab everything still this season, Daniel. Nothing is outside of our grip to be able to go out there and take advantage. There's a lot of work to be done. We're going to have to get the butt crack of dawn and work to the end of night, but it's there still to be taken, to your point. Good point.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the other element here. We have one real competitor in the division, and they've lost 3 games in a row. Like, this is relatively wide open. And also, let's not forget, the NFC is probably, I've been looking at it, they are probably going to produce at least one playoff team with a losing record. Like, that 7 seed is going to go to like Tampa Bay or Minnesota or Atlanta. And none of those teams look like they really want it, but somebody's going to have to take it. The NFC, like, you're getting in with a baseline of mild competence this year. So it's wide open. This is not going to be some situation where 9 wins or 10 wins leaves you out in the cold.
Agreed. No, I think, and again, I think we're going to get to that 10-win state, even if we don't necessarily have a lot of success in that 4-game run. And then once you're in the playoffs, anything can happen to that point. We want to get to a place of being a contender. We want to get more than just one and done in the playoffs. That's the ultimate goal here. But 3rd youngest roster in football entering the season, 2nd year of a rebuild. I feel like I keep kind of saying that to remind people of that a little bit, in that it's moving in the right direction, at the very least, in my opinion. There's stuff to be fixed in a variety of things we've talked over and over about on this stream in every which way but down, but doesn't mean that the thing isn't still moving in a good place. And we should still at the very least get in the playoffs this year and then see what happens from there. Like you say, in a wide open NFC, especially considering at that time, Brendan, if you do get to that point, where's the injury situation? Who's playing well, who isn't, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there's no benefit really to missing the playoffs or tanking. You already have 5 wins and you don't have your 2nd round pick. So there's no decision to be made between like, would I rather just go 5-12? Like 5-12 is not getting you Caleb Williams. It's not getting you Drake May or Brock Bowers or whoever it is that you want, whoever.
Yeah.
Like it's too late for that. So there's no point in talking about that. And no, John Schneider's not trading up for in the 1st round. He doesn't do that. So there's nothing to gain from that angle of it. So you may as well win as much as you can. And even if you do end up with another 9-win season and a one and done in the playoffs, that's still better than last year. Because remember, last year you won 9 games on a weak schedule. This year's schedule is actually tough. So that would represent a small step in the right direction. The train is not moving as fast as we would like it to, but it is moving.
It is. And again, I think the delineation line there is, you can think of it for the last 10 years that I've been waiting 10 years for something to come on. It's still not happening. I get that that's the approach of it, but both me and Brendan slice this up between if we take the last 10-year period, there's an 8-year period where there's a pretty straightforward thread of consistency in your inconsistency to draft and inconsistency how you spend your money, the lack of updating the schemes on both sides of the ball. You've done those things now. And people that talk about the quarterback and going out there and getting a Penix or moving up, like you said, I've heard a bunch of, we're going to move multiple first round picks. Like, well, Schneider doesn't do that. But even if you went and got that quarterback, that doesn't fix the lack of offensive creativity. That doesn't fix the poor pass protection we've seen. That doesn't fix the poor run blocking that we've seen. That doesn't fix a defense that's still not quite coming together from a schematic standpoint to really press offenses in order to confuse them and throw them off week in and week out. You're fairly easy to prepare for on that side of the ball overall. So that doesn't fix those things, just that thing. The quarterback is not that's another thing I hear a lot about, where the quarterback position is viewed as this end all be all solve. Any wound that you have, it will heal it like an antibacterial. And it's not the case here. There's still a lot of things. It's in our best benefit. These things start getting cleared up now versus looking to some quarterback in the offseason as the hero messiah to save things.
Daniel Bailey, thank you for the $1.99. Another dono from Daniel Bailey. Let's also remember it happened to Lions too. It did. I don't know if that makes it okay, but it did.
It did, Daniel. I think the thing with the Lions one, though, that we can say is this is where we're trying to figure out the game you came into this year going, where's our pecking order on this? Are we in the likes of your KCs and your Baltimores and your Cincinnati, who we kind of played relatively close to on the road? You could, you kind of at least, it wasn't a tough game in a lot of respects, but your defense held you in there and you thought, okay, maybe we can kind of hang with them. You weren't sure. You're kind of going, well, maybe. Then you get in a game like this and you get your doors blown off. And the Lions have to look at the same way we do, which is like, we're a good team. We're not a great team. There's time for us to get to being a great team this year. There's time to round into that shape. And maybe it takes another year from now. We're on the right track. I think the Lions are on the right track. But you are the team you are. And those kind of games where you get kind of boat raced like that, where it is telling you a tale of kind of who you are, at least in that moment of where you're standing as a team. It's not one I think you can merely just say, well, they just caught us on a bad day. And if we played this game 10 times, we win 5, they win 5. I think you play this game 10 times. I think you lose it 9 times.
Yeah. And also, another element here, not that this matters right now, maybe to us, because all losses are losses, but it is an AFC opponent. These losses don't hit the way that divisional losses do. Like, to me, our worst loss of the year so far is by far the Rams.
Yes.
Like, to me, that game, I still don't understand what happened in that game, and I'm still not okay with anything that happened in that game. Like this, I'm not happy about it, but I get it. And to me, it's not even close.
No, I still maintain, I know the Rams have been able to be a little bit better than people thought, but at the end of the day, they're in rebuild mode. They're in somewhat tank mode. And you let that team come into your house on the opening day of the season and completely pull your pants down and spank you for a whole game. That to me was a much worse loss on this one on a variety of different levels. This one's going up against a team that very well could end up being the Super Bowl team coming out of the AFC. They looked like it this past week. They've looked like it throughout the course of this year. They're every bit and last few years, you saw with Lamar in this game. He's now doing pocket passer things back there at times, enough so to probably make them much more dangerous when it comes to the playoffs, when in recent years they haven't.
Yeah, I still wonder if he makes it through a 17-game season healthy.
That's valid.
Like we even saw it in this game. Remember that one time when Bobby tackled him and he came up and he wasn't right? Like, it's such a gauntlet for somebody to play like that and get through the entire season healthy. Like, I still don't know if I like his chances, but it is about as balanced a team as you can find. Yeah,
that's the key for them. Lamar's health, of course, at this point, but talent-wise, a scheme that's operating and hitting on all cylinders. And let's remember they moved off it to an offense and defensive coordinator in recent years. It's cooking right now for them. So I hate getting beat as bad as that. It's understandable. I can take it and say this doesn't mean the end of my year, but the Rams one was just one where that can't happen. There's just no way that kind of game can happen like that. And it was really about a game where it just seemed like our team didn't get up for that game as much as they needed to. And that just annoys the hell out of me on that one.
Sam Hutchison, thank you for the $2. Waldron saving the whole playbook for Thanksgiving.
That would explain it.
I don't know. I don't know if this addition of the Chase Young piece, I don't know if we can overcome the Steve Wilkes element, because I'll tell you that Steve Wilkes element, pretty powerful. And
huge.
I was wondering, is there anybody out there who can ruin the talent on this Niners defense? And they found the guy. They found him.
I guess they did find him. He broke what was working like a well-oiled machine, and it's not been well-oiled. We'll see what Chase can do. went behind enemy lines, talking to a Washington guy out there today, and talking a little bit about the fact, taking plays off, picking his shots. Yeah, he's got those pressures up as Chase Young, but there's also a little bit of trying to go get my next contract. Maybe I'm not going to be as worried about playing the run or being disciplined. Let me just go for the quarterback. And see, that move works out, but there was a reason that he went for a late third round pick to that Niner team as well.
Yeah. So I think that's about it. Michael Dixon, I guess, had a good game.
Dixon's doing great, man. Dixon and Myers doing well. Special teams holding up their end of the bargain. So the other two sides of the ball, they got to get their stuff figured out.
And I think that's really about it. I don't think we got anything else to talk about with this game. It's just a game where not a lot goes your way, and it feels like you got to burn the whole team down. But the more likely outcome coming out of a game like that is you just need to burn the tape. You just need to flush that one, learn from it what you can, but don't make any sweeping conclusions based off of it. Because if you do, you're going to wake up the next morning and you're going to have 3 players on your roster because you cut everybody else.
Amen. Yeah, you're going to be some bad games along the way. Just got to let the whole process play out. And then we make our determinations at the end of the year. Then we got 17 whole games to cut through, along with 2 years of this rebuild to kind of make an assessment off of. And then we'll determine which way is the right way at that point.
All right. So I think that's going to do it for the stream tonight. Thank you, everybody, for coming out. It was a great stream. We had to do this. It wasn't always fun. We weren't necessarily excited to do this one. Oh, real quick. King Dome Joe, thank you for the $2. I didn't like that ass whooping. Oh, well, next up. And I think that's the right attitude to have. That's the attitude that I'm going to try to echo as we send it to the end of the stream here. You gotta, that kind of game is going to happen every now and then. It just is. I can sit here and say it's not acceptable, but the reality is it does happen from time to time. And you can either learn from it and move on, or you can get stuck on it forever. And I know which one I'm going to do.
Me as well, man. Well said. Me as well.
All right. So tomorrow, I think starting at 5 and probably going for a couple hours, maybe a few hours, we're going to do a show where we take a look at college football prospects. And we are starting to form our big boards because we've got a lot of games now. Every team's played 9 games or so. So we've got a big sample size, and we got a pretty good feeling about how this draft might go down now. So we're going to have a lot to say about all your favorite college football prospects. And last time we did this show, we went for 3 hours. This show, we may do the same. We'll see.
You never know. We got a lot of guys to chop up here and look over.
So stop on by tomorrow, and then Thursday we have the Commanders to discuss.
That's right. Preview of this upcoming matchup. Still a very tough team to deal with. We're not going to have an easy peasy walk right over the top of them kind of game. They do present some problems for the Seahawks team on both sides of the ball.
So thank you, everybody, for coming out tonight. We'll do it again tomorrow night, like I just said. See you guys tomorrow with more videos. And after a disastrous event like that, you do all the things that you need to do to get past it. But at the end of it, you do have to remember the most important thing. You do have to remember the key element here that we have to keep in mind as fans, that we are still fans, even after a game like that. There's not really anything that can happen that can make us stop being fans. So even after a game like that, maybe it's more important than ever. This might be the most important one that I ever do. Maybe. Jeez. After a game like that, this might be the biggest one ever because it means something this time. So let's hit it and let's get out of here.
Let them know.
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.